metallurgists, to another Friday. This is our 57th episode of Heavy Metallurgy. Thank you all for joining us. I'm glad to see some familiar faces in the chat tonight already. Just some light reading over there by Librarian Steele.
Oh, hey, have we started already? Geez,
Yeah.
sorry about that. Got lost in a good book there. How's everybody doing?
Hope everybody's doing well, and I'm here to inform everyone that after an extensive search of the internet, no metal bands have been influenced by the book Everybody Poops. So my contribution tonight is going to be very minimal. No, I kid. You got the G.G. Allens of the world. Maybe that he was inspired a little bit, but it's good to have everybody here. Alan, it's good to see your smiley, shining face. What's been going on? I know we haven't seen each other for a whole day.
Yeah. Since that time, I think we've gotten about 6 inches of rain in this part of South Carolina. So yeah, it's rained and rained some more. But we needed some rain, probably not that much that fast. But gave me a couple of days off from the yard work. So yeah, I've just been working on other stuff around the house and getting stuff ready for tonight. I think we've got a cool topic, and of course, we've got a very cool guest that we're going to bring on in a minute. But before we do all of that, Marty, do you want to walk people through our regular announcements?
Regular announcements. Yes, we've got a t-shirt available, which is, many of you know by now, I've sold quite a few of them. Thank you, everybody, for checking those out. Link in the description for In Streaming There Is No Law. It's a bolt thrower parody heavy metallurgy shirt. And also, people that have asked how to support us, well, super chats are available. If you feel so inclined to throw some cash in our direction, it goes back into helping support the channel, technical stuff, and StreamYard fees. So thank you, everybody that has, and anybody that wants to. Cool. If not, no pressure. Sit back and enjoy. We love having all you here. And tonight's guest, this is his second appearance on Heavy Metallurgy. We're thrilled to have him here. It's Nechochwen himself, Mr. Aaron Carey. Get him on here. There he is.
Hey guys.
Hey, Aaron.
How you doing?
How's it going? How have you been?
Been great. It's been a nice couple weeks since this record came out, and a lot of support from locally here and online, and I want to thank you all for that. And
sorry.
It's all right. Been very, very humbling to there it is right there.
Let's blow that up. So this is the CD version that comes in the record.
Yep.
Easily. I mean, I've loved everything Nechochwen has done, and I'm not saying it here to kiss the man's ass, but he's a dear friend of mine. We've worked together for a lot of years, hung out in person together many times. Love this guy, and I absolutely love what you guys have done on this album. Kanawha Black is, I'm going to say it, Album of the Year contender. For those of you that don't believe so, you're doing something wrong.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Marty.
But let's talk about the album for a minute. I mean, this is 7 years in the making. I mean, life is busy, and, you know.
I would say it's a gap of 7 years, but I don't know if it's 7 years in the making. Maybe ideas here and there. I'd say a good 3 years, because we had some other stuff going on.
Yep.
We had, Andrew's got multiple bands.
Iron Flame, Icarus Witch, Brimstone Coven.
Yeah.
All great bands in their own right, for sure.
We had some splits and some remixing, remastering stuff for our Ancient Pulse CD, and I went and got another degree, and that took up a couple years as well. So there's like all kinds of stuff that was happening in that stretch that just wasn't the right time or place. And I don't think this is the kind of project that just pumps something out one album after another. I just do not have that knack of being super prolific, and I'm okay with that. Made peace with that. I think I need to maybe prioritize a little more time for it in my life, but I get sidetracked really easily, and I take on a lot of things all the time, work-wise and stuff. So, it comes out when it does, and I'm saying now, this is 2022. It's been good 13, almost 14 years of support from you, Marty. Uh, that's a long ass time, man. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for working with us. I mean, certainly could probably have benefited from being on a much larger label, but we got a little bit of a family thing going on here, and it's just really humbling to be working with someone so incredibly talented and
well, if you
awesome.
flip it around, it's got to be a little frustrating for 7 years in between albums, and you're putting them out. So
no, it is what it is. I mean, it is what it is. We're all adults here, and we all have kids or work and other obligations. It's just we're not all 16 and ready to throw our lives into a van and smell each other's farts and drive around the country playing to 20 people every night.
That was vivid and descriptive.
Right. It's funny you say this, Tyler. Actually, there is a show coming up, the Fire in the Mountain Fest, the Grand Tetons, I believe, and Nechochwen is playing it. They're doing a full acoustic set, but why don't you tell us a little bit about the preparation and who's joining you for that and what's going on with that?
Yeah, we've been rehearsing. So far, it's just been Andrew and I rehearsing acoustically for this show. We also have Quinn Lucas, who plays for Iron Flame and Icarus Witch. He is a School of Rock manager and has worked with tons of people. He's worked with Paul Diano. He's worked with big name folks. He's a super professional guy, and we're really, really happy to be working with him on this. So we're just working out the details of getting out there now and getting some rehearsals in with him here. So get ready for that.
Well, Heavy Therapy Decibel has been actually quite supportive of this album for sure.
Yeah.
Albert and crew have
very thankful to them.
Very generous. They've stepped up. They gave it a really great review, 9 out of 10 in the last issue, the Candlemass issue. There's an interview in the magazine, which is it's a long time coming for Byron bands, but we're starting to get our way in there. Sometimes it takes a little time and squeaky wheel gets the grease, but I'm glad people are finally coming around. Nechochwen is a band that's been deserving since the moment they put out a CD, and I'm glad it's starting to finally snowball into something, a level of respect and that I feel they deserve. So. And again, I'm not saying that to kiss your ass. It's true.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic album, Aaron. I had it pre-ordered. I've had it for a week and a half or so. Have played it a lot. For folks that haven't heard it yet, if you've enjoyed Nechochwen's past albums, you're going to enjoy this one. It's really well written, as you would expect from Aaron and Andrew. Every song's got its own distinct, sound and style. I thought you did a really, really nice job on all the lyrics. Working in not just the Appalachian stuff, but I like the way you give it a little touch of mysticism as well.
Yeah.
With things like the murky deep. I've heard that same story about George Washington. Once upon a time.
You're the only other person that I've ever talked to that's heard that story as well. Yeah,
I don't know where I heard it, but yeah, I remember that as a kid, him having that kind of supernatural encounter.
Yeah,
yeah,
very cool.
Yeah,
could you explain? I've never heard the story. Is it something we could talk about quickly, or is it the murky?
Yeah, sure. I'll give the condensed version here, and I heard this from Nechochwen, who's been my mentor for all things Indian since 1992. Is my Shawnee friend in the Laurel Highlands, Pennsylvania, and the drummer for the band Migos. I don't know if you're familiar with them, and formerly Roger Gore as well. He told me this story about along the Youghiogheny River near Ohiopyle. It's a pretty significant place to hang out around here for whitewater rafting and such, that when George Washington was a young surveyor for the British, that he was surveying through that part, and it's a very rugged landscape. And along the Yacht, he sat for lunchtime and was just chilling. And then he looked over and saw a great horned serpent, which is a a figure, if you're not familiar, from Algonquin mythology, for lack of a better term, tradition. It's a serpent with like antlers and like a deer body and bust, come out of the water and grab an animal and just drug it back down into the water. And, my thought was, wow, this is George Washington. This isn't like a young Indian scout or something. This is, somebody that you wouldn't think of having an encounter like that. But
and maybe is not familiar with, native tradition and tales and stuff. So
yeah,
maybe he was. I mean, obviously he worked with them quite extensively, especially on his trip and his travels, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. With Nechochwen, who's also referenced in that song. That was a woodland path through southwest Pennsylvania, Nechochwen's path, and that was an Indian that George Washington worked with quite frequently, and Half King and such. But I have a vivid picture of that in my mind of what that would have been like, and yeah, that song came out of it, the Murky Deep, and yeah, that's one of those very obscure tales that I think needed to come to life through music somehow.
And it also makes you wonder too. People back in the day, they did a lot of living off the land, especially if you're traveling cross country by foot or horse or whatever. You're going to stop and eat. You don't necessarily pack a lunch, so you're kind of living off the land as you go. Did he ingest some psilocybin mushrooms? Did he get into something that was a little psychedelic, or his native guide gave him something?
I don't know. I like
calm
to think
some pain. Hard to say.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Dazed and Confused, where they're at that party talking about Martha Washington packing him a big bowl.
Right.
Yep.
Hip lady.
Yeah. One other thing I liked about the album, too, Aaron, and for folks that are interested in the synopsis that Aaron just gave, I like the fact that you wrote like a little paragraph or two about each of the songs, kind of where they come from, what your perspective is. I know some people don't always sit and read that stuff. I always think it was really interesting. So when I flipped over the lyric insert and I saw all this other stuff, I'm just like, ooh, let's check this out for sure. So yeah, it gives folks that aren't as familiar with Appalachia and some of the different traditions and the local and regional history. I think that's really cool that you took the time to include that background information so folks can really get a little bit more out of the songs and the lyrics, because they are really, really well done.
Well, thank you. We've done that pretty much from the beginning. Algonquin Mythos had a very short paragraph synopsis type thing, but at the same time, that album was almost completely instrumental. And then going into Azimuth's,
Ryan.
Nice. When we went into Azimuth's, we had this 16 panel layout thing, so it's like, well, this stuff's really obscure history. I should probably write up some more extensive liner notes and stuff like that. So now I can't imagine doing an album without doing that. I think it's, for what we're doing, I think it's pretty important. And I always kind of wanted to write anyway, and I think I'm better at writing music than writing books, so it's kind of a compromise for me. Get a little into writing, Yeah,
but yeah, it's definitely for folks maybe that are only checking it out digitally or something. This is the kind of thing that really makes it worth folks' time to still buy the physical product. That you're not going to get this extra insight if you just download it. There's nothing wrong with doing that if that's how folks want to consume music, but there's extra stuff in there that really makes it worthwhile to have on your shelf, because you can actually read this extra information and really dive deeper into the material. So definitely encourage folks to check out the album and order it if you haven't already. It is a very, very good listen. Like Marty, I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up Aaron's ass because he's sitting here. It's a good listen and a good read as well.
Well, thank you.
I got to
tell
you
guys for the comments.
Noah made a comment earlier about the last song blowing his mind. Wow, that last song is such a scorching, awesome, amazingly written song. I just when it ends, I listen to it about 4 more times and wish there was another 40 minutes of album. I wish it was a double, but you know,
It's one of my favorites that we've ever done.
so good.
Across the Divide.
It reminds me of the last song on Otto. The same similar, really intense, super fast riffing and just pure intensity. I love it. So good.
Yeah.
You guys do it so well. Have such an atypical take on it, on that style of riffing. It's inspiring and breath of fresh air.
Thank you. It's you know, kind of a tricky thing too, because we're always thinking about the vinyl format, that you should have some mellower stuff at the, you know, the end of the side, you know, for the constraints or whatever of you know, fidelity. So both of the songs are side enders, and they get kind of intense toward the end of them. So, you know, what's better?
Gotta go out with a bang. Gotta go out with a bang.
Yeah, what's better for the album, you know, as a whole, rather than, you know, those old fashioned limitations or whatever. So,
And
I think the record's really
go
good.
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, the record itself, I think, sounds really good. Like the quality of the vinyl, I think, sounds really, really good.
And Ryan brought up a comment here. The Bandcamp page opened up now. I did put the link in the description for Nechochwen's Bandcamp page.
Nice.
He has got
Ryan.
a bunch of stuff on there, merch for sale, and has a bunch more merch coming. I just sent out a bunch more today. So for sure, go check out the Nechochwen Bandcamp page and send these lads some cash. They deserve it. But let's talk a bit about why you picked this topic. What was the impetus for this topic?
I guess a couple different things. It's pretty close to my heart, because a lot of what I've written originated with either some oral tradition thing, or with written narratives of things that actually happen, or things that I guess prehistoric things that people have studied, and then later on, after reading about them, I've gone to those places and explored them myself. Anyway, a lot of the inspiration, the stuff that I do, comes from some book, and my collection of books is probably almost as big as my CD and LP collection. So I have a lot of books, and I really enjoy the historical stuff. So I thought about my own music, and then I thought, well, I know there's the first one that always comes to mind is Maiden, I would have to say, because literally Steve Harris has songs titled after a book or whatever, and I knew that growing up, or something alluding to a book, very famous books, and you know, you can kind of tell where Steve Harris's you know, where his likes are with the books that he picks out. But I started thinking about books in general as being like a lot older of a format, because records, CDs, tapes, and stuff is like a really young thing comparatively. We didn't have anything like that back then, before the wax cylinders and stuff. So I picked out a couple things here that got me thinking, you know, these, to my knowledge, aren't real books. The Book of Kings, Mournful Congregation, the Book of Souls, the manuscript. Okay? I don't think these are actual books they're talking about. There's also the Book of Heavy Metal, and I do not own that album.
I do want to circle back around and touch upon what you kind of already mentioned. Since I've known you, you know, just talking on the phone and stuff, I've learned a lot. You know, like when we put out Azimuth to the Other World, I mean, that whole the concept of that album revolved around the Adena and Hopewell. They were a prehistoric native culture that predates a lot of stuff. You live in an area that's surrounded by mounds and a giant serpent mound.
Correct.
what books in particular, for anybody that might want to start digging into this a little bit more, have influenced some of your music in Nechochwen?
Well, on that topic, there's a book called Mysteries of the Hopewell, and I think William Romaine, I think without the E, like not like the lettuce, but there's a chapter in there called Azimuths to the Otherworld. That's where I got the title for that record, was from that book. And there's a lot of insight into not just scientific or like really rigid, boring archaeological data. It was the insight into spirituality. There's another book from a local museum, the Delft Nerona Museum at the Grave Creek Mound. It's, I think, the biggest conical mound, at least in the country, maybe in the world, is like 40 minutes from me or something. And I go to that museum pretty often. They have a little pamphlet book thing that had pictures of things like skulls that they found, that they would remove the front teeth and put the jaw of a wolf, I think they called it spatula, into where their front teeth go, and they would put the cloak of a wolf's fur over the head and take hallucinogenic mushrooms and go into these rituals where you become the wolf, which I guess is like lycanthropy, isn't it? In European tradition.
Yep.
So there's like psychedelic lycanthropy happening 2,800 years ago in the Ohio Valley. Like, what's not cool about that? Like, you got to write metal songs about that. So that's what I started doing. And well, not just metal stuff, but classical pieces about this stuff too. I'm not sure exactly why I find this so fascinating, but I do. I still do. And some of the illustrations in that book, I can't remember the exact title of it, but I think it's like a study of West Virginia archaeology or an introduction or something to it. And some of the illustrations they had of going through a burial ceremony, and you see the mound in the distance, and you can tell they're in a procession. And just looking at those line drawings from the 60s really inspired me. The line in the song Azimuths to the Otherworld, an angle to guide us on burial nights. I tied in with that Romaine book because he would talk about particular angles and azimuths to the sky, where they would project the smoke of cremation to end up in a certain place in the sky for a proper connection to the other world. I'm like, these people are really, really advanced.
Well, aren't they also like placing their burial mounds in alignment with celestial things as well?
Yeah, not just burials, but other things, walls that would parallel road walls that would go for like 60 miles, and stuff that really only makes sense from the sky, which we reference in the title track of Kanawha Black. The hidden meaning, only seen from the sky and felt deep inside. So, if you look at some of these things like the Newark earthworks in Ohio, they're laid out. They're basically a diagram that only makes sense from the air, but it's a diagram for like a sweat lodge. Like, what should that be? What should that look like for future generations? What's there, but you can only see it in its totality from the sky, and they didn't have airplanes back then.
No.
So, and I'm not trying to go into this, middle of the night talk show, outer realm type of stuff here, but it's true. It's like
Art Bell, there we come. Yeah.
Right out I-70 in Ohio. For me, I've been to those places many times. But overall, I think the thing that got me started into this was the Alan Eckert books about more recent history, like late 1700s, early 1800s, the Narratives of America series, Frontiersmen, books about Blue Jacket, Johnny Logan. This one here, I think, was the first one that I read. I always have this close by, Panther in the Sky, which, there's lyrics from Heart of Achamon's October 6th, 1813. Yeah, even the cover of that is just like, You see that?
Hold on, let me blow it up.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
You know, I got this book when I was, well, this is a newer copy. I've had this book 3 or 4 times. I always end up giving it to somebody to read. But I got that, I think, when I was about 13. And from there, I started reading the Alan Eckhart books, and they continue to be a source of inspiration for our lyrics and just for the mood of the songs. I would say more in the ambient and, or I guess, atmospheric acoustic type stuff that we do. But some of the war scenes and the torture scenes and stuff are extremely graphic for novels, historical, well, they're not novels really, they're historical narratives that came out in the 70s. Very graphic, no sugarcoating anything that happened up in, through this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, obviously, you're an artist in the metal world that has been influenced by literature, nonfiction mostly, and a lot of spiritual stuff. And let's get into other bands that may have traveled down this path as well. Aaron, why don't you, Alan, do you have anything to add? Do you want to add before we jump into this?
No, that's good. Some folks are chatting about this over in the comments, so I'm just adding a few things there. But yeah, folks are definitely finding this quite interesting.
Yeah. And I'm glad to see that everybody in the chat is already way smarter than I am. So enjoy tonight, folks. Here we go. Aaron, why don't you fire it off with some stuff? Or
Okay.
An album.
I have some stuff. I'm trying to think of what I want. Let me start with this one, okay? Because this is what I consider intentionally getting this completely right. If that's what you're going to do, is base your art off of something like this, okay? It's Penfaga. Okay, Marty.
String Skipper. Yeah.
Skipper. You are familiar with this.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
This is a really fascinating tale. It really is.
I'm laughing at the comment. Sorry. Yep.
Well,
I got all my book learning on the streets, people. These guys went to school, got smart. Not me. I kept it true. Anyway, sorry, Aaron. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. Okay, so let me talk about this album a little bit. Okay, sagas. I don't know much about Norse mythology, the sagas, Viking things, runes, all this stuff. Like it's always out of my realm. But I learned a lot from having this CD. It's about this Grettir the Strong, Grettir Asmundarsson, born in Iceland around the year 800. So a long time ago, year 800, there is a lot of information that survives. I don't have written things from this country from that far back. Everything would be like oral tradition. So it's pretty amazing how detailed this stuff is, and obviously translated to English. But if you've not heard Penfaga, this is the closest reference I would have is Arcanum.
Yeah, I was going to say Arcanum. Pretty easy. Marty? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I love Arcanum as well. And these guys have enough differences to where it's not like a copycat.
No.
It's really interesting melodies and instrumentation that isn't just guitar and stuff. Great vocals.
They have a very unique take on black metal, for sure.
I agree. But I also love the layout of this. It's on either side has a picture of the artist and a picture of Grettir, the saga's hero. And it tells this whole story through here. And I feel like kind of a kindred spirit with this because we do this with Nechochwen albums as well. We like to have the synopsis.
Yep.
And, usually it's kind of a fold-out thing or whatever, panels on the CD or a big sheet in the LP. And, in fact, I went online. I think I'm going to order the LP of this. I never had it, and I saw it online earlier.
I'll send you one.
Oh, you have that?
Oh, yeah. I got a bunch of them. I'll send you one.
I'm glad I didn't hit.
I'll send you a copy of Storm as well.
Awesome. I do not have Storm. I have Yord. I think that's the one that came after. It's got like a yellowish cover.
Yeah, that's the latest. The last one, I think they're done, aren't they?
Yeah, I think he finished up or whatever. But anyway, check it out, Panfaga. If you had never heard it, great Arcanum-esque black metal from southern Sweden, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so love it. All right, that's my first entry here.
Sounds cool. I'm not familiar with that one.
I can send you one too, Alan. I've got plenty.
Oh,
I'll send you one. I got some. I'm waiting on some stuff for you anyway. I'll include it. No worries.
Okay, thanks, man. That sounds neat.
Yep. You're up, sir.
All right, so we'll start with a very obvious one because it is one of my favorite authors, and it's had a big impact on all kinds of pop culture things, including a lot of heavy metal, and that is J.R.R. Tolkien. Most folks, of course, know it for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He did write a few other things. I also have a 6-book set of unpublished works that one of my friends borrowed 10 years ago and still hasn't returned. So, David,
the bane of loaning books.
David, if you're watching this, you still have my other Tolkien books. Half my shelf is empty, but to be honest, it's probably taken him this long to get through them all. Tolkien can be pretty dense, of course. The one I picked to kind of tie this in with a particular record or album is Blind Guardian's Nightfall in Middle Earth. They did, Blind Guardian's done a lot of Tolkien-inspired songs, but this album is a full-blown concept album. It doesn't tell the story from Lord of the Rings, however. It tells the story from this book, which is the Silmarillion. This is an old press of it.
Yeah.
The Silmarillion, we were talking about it, in the dugout before we came online. The best way to describe it is, it's the Old Testament of Middle Earth. It tells you all the creation story, the Genesis tale of how the elves and dwarves and all this stuff came to be, and what all the early stories were that kind of shaped the world. It's a really interesting read. It's not an easy read because it is a little bit like reading a Bible. It's also very different from reading Lord of the Rings. With Lord of the Rings, you'll spend 3 pages reading about the flowers growing in one particular valley. With this book, you'll read half a page and cover like 300 years of history. So it goes very fast, and you have to pay a lot of attention to all the lineages of, the elf and dwarf noble families and stuff. Things that make the book interesting and things that make the album interesting. The album's a very good take and interpretation of the story. That the beginning part of it, the spoken introduction, is told from the standpoint of the main villain. When he's about to be overthrown. And it's funny because if you didn't know this, listening to it, you would assume that you're listening to like maybe some heroic king who's in danger and, the orcs are, beating down his door, but it's the other way around. It's the elves who are storming his citadel, and he's kind of reflecting on his life choices, which have not been good ones, and realizing that, this shit's about to go real bad for him. It's very, very well told. If you know the story, the songs are really hit the mark well. The other thing that makes Silmarillion worthwhile to read, I've probably read this 4 or 5 times. It was my airplane reading for a few years. Anytime I had to fly somewhere, I would just throw this in the bag, and no matter how long the trip was going to be, I was entertained until it was over. But the thing that's really useful with the Silmarillion, in terms of if you like Lord of the Rings, but you're not that deep into it, this book explains a lot about the attitude of the elves. I remember as a kid when my dad first read me The Hobbit as a bedtime story, and then later when I read The Lord of the Rings, the elves are sometimes a little hard to like. They're very aloof, very standoffish. Snooty, Yes, they come across as very elite, very snooty, but they also have this weird resignation about them where, all this stuff is going on, and you have to twist their arm to get them to help you. It's just like, dude, this bad shit's going down and we need help getting rid of this ring. And the elves are kind of like, do we have to? Why don't you just go do it yourself? And she's like, what's with these guys?
Well, they had their own ring of power. I mean, all the groups had their own ring of power, didn't they?
They did. Each race was given a certain number of rings, but the one ring rules them all.
Yeah,
it literally it controls all the others.
Yeah.
But the big thing with the Silmarillion is this gives you the history of the elves. And goddamn, these people have been fucked over so many times for so many thousands of years that you really do come to understand their kind of, group mentality regarding Middle-earth by the time you get to the Lord of the Rings. They have been fighting these same two evil bastards for millennia. And they went a little here and they went a little there, but for the most part, they have spent the last several centuries having their asses repeatedly handed to them. So there really is this just resignation that it's just going to happen all over again. We don't want to do it again. We're sick of going through this cycle. We've been here and we've done this and we've tried, and it just doesn't work. Even the one major victory they have through the Silmarillion, it's more led by human activity. It's part of what's being depicted on the cover artwork here with the dance of Luthien, when Luthien and Berion slip into his lair and retake one of the Silmarils. That's a human-elf interaction. It's not just an elf, a master plan. It's only because there's love between a human and an elf, which of course is kind of frowned upon, that they have any success there. So it's kind of like even their big triumph. It's not because of just what the elf effort was. When the elves have their efforts, like with track, is it 5 or 6, Time Stands Still on the Iron Hill, one of the great elf champions goes out and challenges in single combat, and he can't get the job done. They had everything, and they fucked it all up, and they've paid for it for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. And so then you're kind of like, okay, I get why the elves don't want to have anything else to do with it. I get why they're just resigned to, fuck it, we're out of here. You guys can have Middle Earth. We don't give a fuck anymore. You really finally understand why that is. So anyway, Tolkien, huge impact. Marty, I suspect there's a band you want to talk about in the context of Tolkien, so I'm not going to bring that up. But yeah, they've had, a huge influence on lots of styles of metal, lots of albums, lots of songs. It's really fertile material that works well with heavy metal. A lot of bands seem to like that fantasy element that Tolkien elaborated on, to a degree that really nobody else ever has and probably never will. So my Tolkien fanboy moment is over. Marty, let's pass it on over to you.
Well, like I said in the chat, I struggled with that book because it is essentially the Middle-earth Bible, and it reads like the Bible, and it was fucking hard to get through. I got about 3 chapters and had to quit, but the rest of the book's amazing, and that book was amazing too. It was just too many names, too many places, all thrown at you, and without context. It was just like I'm reading words on a page. I'm not absorbing a story. But anyway,
it's very hard. That's why it was my airplane book. On the airplane, there's nothing else to distract me, and I can sit there and flip back and forth to the appendix as many times as I need to see, okay, this elf's great granddaddy was that elf. Okay. Yep. You're exactly right.
And I see this comment by Rick. He and I must have did our learning on the same streets. Alan, I had a different experience with the Keebler elves. What you talking about? I love the Keebler elves. They're so good to me. Anyway, I'm going to stick with the
one
same
ring pop to rule them all.
The Middle Earth is huge for metal, and Austria's summoning are very much the dark side of the Tolkien universe. And these are my 2 favorite summoning albums. Stronghold being my absolute favorite. The last song, A Distant Flame Before the Sun, is probably one of the most majestic, scathing anthems ever, man. So good. But summoning combine a dungeon synth element with black metal, a very caustic but melodic and atmospheric form of black metal. And they have even done it, probably the first band ever to do an entire song in the Orcish language, which is very cool. I don't remember which song it is, and like I said, I was like on a mad dash to get stuff pulled for this. But again, dealing with a lot of orc stuff, a lot of the dark side, the evil side of Tolkien. Summoning to me sounds like they could have been the soundtrack for the movies easily. Yeah. It was the way that the movies look and the way they play out. very much would have been in summoning's wheelhouse. I think there was even a petition at some point. Some fans were trying to get Jackson to recognize summoning in some form or another, but obviously that was never going to fucking happen. But
No.
out of the Tolkien universe, this was my first grab for the evening. Actually, Aaron helped me remember. We were talking about it. We talked on the phone last night, and he brought up, I'm like, oh God, yeah, that's easy. That's the first one to come to mind. Why didn't that pop right into my head? But absolutely crushingly great atmospheric Tolkien worship. The way these albums play out and the way they make me feel is kind of a similar feeling as to when I was reading the books. Very world building music, a fine companion to the books, I would say, for sure. So yeah, Tolkien is my first jump into this fray.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, one last note on summoning. One thing that's fun with them too, they dig really deep into Tolkien's unpublished material for a lot of that, for a lot of their songs and inspiration. It's not just song 1, The Hobbit, song 2, The Fat Hobbit, song 3, the ambiguous, androgynous Hobbit. No, they do like a lot of stuff, regarding like the second age of Middle Earth, which isn't documented at all in the Silmarillion or in Lord of the Rings. So they cover a lot of the Númenórean history of man and stuff like that. So they dig really, really deep into it, which is cool.
Very cool. Aaron, you're back.
This is the one that popped into my mind first. Ramble On.
Be right back.
Mm-hmm. Oh, mm-hmm. Yep.
Misty Mountain Hawk, Battle of Evermore. This is pretty early on stuff to reference those books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the first one when I was talking to Marty last night that popped into my head. And then I was like, whoa, summoning is pretty obvious, their connection with literature and such. So I guess I should bring another one out here. Should I wait for him?
No, go right ahead. He'll return. But yeah, I'm glad you showed Zeppelin because their contribution to bringing some of that fantasy stuff to light. Tolkien was extremely popular, during the '60s with the the hippie generation and stuff. And Zeppelin, definitely incorporated that. They always had one foot in the sort of mystical, mythical, fantastical stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that song's one of my favorites of theirs ever. So my next one here, what do these two albums have in common? This is Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind, and Satyricon, Nemesis Divina. And what they have in common is they both take Book of Revelation, something from the Book of Revelation, and change it a little bit. There's a quote right on the back of this record where they change pain to brain. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more brain, for the former things are passed away. And of course, there's the song Revelations on here. But my focus is more on the Satyricon. My favorite of theirs.
Oh, you bastard.
Hey,
I know what you're going to pull. Go ahead.
Did you? No, I mean, I already showed this. Did you? Is this one of the ones that? Okay.
No, go ahead. No.
Why am I picking this one out?
Because Dawn of a New Age is he rewrote essentially Book of Revelations.
Yeah, and we got some similarity here too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is, and Marty can definitely echo me on this. Such a powerful, creepy vocal delivery, and that song, and the second one on here too, is for Hexet. It's a very, very chaotic vocal delivery. It's kind of hard to follow without the lyrics.
This is the best Satyricon album. This thing is
I agree.
Good.
I love Dark Medieval Times too. I mean, they have some really good stuff, but this one's my absolute favorite. And I've listened to this so many times. And when this part's come in, and there was a great earthquake, and all this stuff, it's just how brutal and grim some parts of the Bible can be. And I mean, apparently down at the bottom here, partly rewritten by Seder.
Yeah.
But I just thought that this was a really amazing reference to the Bible, obviously in their blasphemous context.
Yep.
But such a powerful thing. And what were you going to say about this one, Marty?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, he took that excerpt from the Book of Revelations, the four horsemen riding upon the earth, bastardized it a little bit with his own take on it, and it very well suited the nature and the feel of the song, and that the sword comes ripping out of the sheath, and
sounds so cool in there. It's so powerful,
so good. Such a powerful, something so cheesy and stupid is such a powerful statement to the Rock and Metal Plus. It's the best Satyricon. I like Shadow Throne a lot too. That's probably my second favorite, but Nemesis Divina is an absolute. They were never this good again. I mean, they put out some cool shit afterwards, but it was all, I don't know. Their rise to popularity kind of weakened their older school bite, I think. But I mean, that was.
And I listened to this last night, and just the riffs are complex as hell in parts of this. Some of them are actually pretty simple, almost like Dark Throne-ish type riffs here and there. But some of those parts are really kind of rambling, but it never gets boring or like messy or anything. It's really solid. But I thought that was a really strong statement to open up with something from Book of Revelations. And
Seder wrote all this stuff, but Nocturnal Culto also plays all the guitars on the album, the rhythm guitars on the album too. He's going under Feldulv, I guess.
Okay.
But this is Nocturnal Culto. He plays on this album.
Well, see, I did not realize that, Marty. I learn something new all the time. And
but yeah, great. That's a great pick for sure. That was the second one I picked.
Here.
Yeah.
Grim.
Want my corpse paint to look like a butthole. Congratulations, you did it. Nailed it. A wrinkly old butthole. Anyway, Alan, you're up.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, I disappeared for a moment there. Had to internet connection just dropped for a moment. Probably a tree branch on a line. As I said, we've gotten a ton of rain this week, so everything's a little droopy. Okay, so I started with the sort of fake Genesis tale. So now we'll do a little more highbrow take on Genesis again. Everybody knows the band Paradise Lost. One of the big three in the British death doom scene that exploded out. And of course, their name comes from the poem Milton's Paradise Lost, first published in 1667. It's considered Milton's masterwork. It's 10,000 lines long. And this one, after I read the Silmarillion, this became my airplane reading for a couple of years. I never quite got to the end of this. To be fair, I got over halfway, 3 separate trips, but I never could get through the whole thing. But as a literary document, it had a big influence on British and most Western prose moving forward, just in terms of the way it was written. It's in particular a style called blank verse, which hadn't been used a lot up to that point and then became very common after Milton popularized it. But it's another take on Genesis, but this is directly a take on Genesis. Milton tells the story of Satan's rebellion in heaven. That, spoiler alert, didn't go very well for Satan. His fall, his corruption of Adam and Eve, and spoiler alert, that didn't go well for them.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Oops.
Yep, he's back. Okay. Yep. There you are.
Yeah, sorry if it's a little glitchy, but yeah, a lot of the different quotations you hear in the way that the fall of man and stuff is depicted is very heavily influenced by Milton's poetry. So that's where the name Paradise Lost comes from, and I thought it was kind of appropriate for a band that started out in that gothic-y style of death doom, and of course Paradise Lost, changed and went through different styles over time. But a kind of classically influenced name by one of the really important British literary works from the 17th century. So I figured I'd shout out the band. I just happened to grab this particular album off the shelf. I know it's not everybody's favorite by them. And I grabbed this off the shelf, which isn't everybody's favorite airplane reading either. But yeah, Paradise Lost, still a cool band and a cool read if you can get through it all.
That was a good pick. Did not think of that.
All right. Well, it's no to those of you that are in the know and realize the greatness of Mark Shelton and Manila Road. He was influenced by a lot of authors and poets. Obviously, they've done a lot of mystical styled things revolving around Edgar Allan Poe. And my first point of reference is off their second album, Metal. The song Queen of the Black Coast is a Manila Road drafted the plot and title from the Robert E. Howard story, Queen of the Black Coast. And for those of you who are Barbarian fans, Robert E. Howard is the creator of Conan, of course. So very much a big influence. There you go. Yep, Robert E. Howard.
The book deal with Marty's pick.
And we're also going to go with a Poe reference. We've got Mystification, the title track off this album, is kind of an ode to Edgar Allan Poe, kind of like Shelton putting himself in a situation from the thoughts of Poe somewhat. We've talked about Manila Road on this channel a lot, and this shit is so good. I know, Alan, this probably is a little further down your list, but probably one of the thrashier of the Manila Road albums, but this is there's a lot of really emotive, good, strong riffs, and the lyrical writing is very good, and the spirit and the content matches the riffs quite effectively on here. So, I mean, Shelton, later on, he started branching into the Viking stuff. They did a whole album. What the hell was it called? Valhalla? I can't remember the damn name. Voyager. And it was a V. So, yeah, he was very influenced by esoteric poetry, authors, and mythology for sure. But, yep, Manila Road, another one that came to mind pretty quickly. Sorry if I stepped on your toes on that one, Alan.
Oh, no. I'll probably mention them a little bit later, too. But, yeah, it's a great and obvious pick for sure. Had to be mentioned.
Yep. Okay, Aaron, you're back.
Well, I will piggyback on that idea here. Talking about Maiden, there's so many things that you can pick from, so many books, Phantom of the Opera and Dune and such. The one I picked was Murders in the Rue Morgue, one of those Poe stories off of this. And also discovered it's the only early one that I don't have on vinyl. It's the one I have this on CD and tape, but I was looking for it. I was like, I know I own this, and apparently I don't. But anyway, Murders in the Rue Morgue, very cool story, and I think whoever wrote the lyrics to this, I don't know if it was Steve.
It's probably Steve.
Yeah, probably should have looked that up. But yeah, Steve Harris. A lot of words in this, and I think he kind of twist the story around a little bit, maybe, from what I remember reading in school. But also, that's just kind of like a short side reference. This one, too, I came back to this album, Cradle Filth. I remember hearing
Was
them.
it Dusk in Her Embrace?
Dusk in Her Embrace. I remember hearing a song off that Principle of Evil Made Flesh off the compilation you guys were talking about a few weeks ago. The Death is Just the Beginning. I think they were on there. And I always thought that song was really cool, and I never found that CD. I still don't have it. And a friend of mine got Vampire, and then this one right here. I don't know. At the time, I just remember it being like so ultra screechy vocally that I had a hard time listening to it. And going back, like I like it more than I used to. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because there's a song on here a gothic romance, Red Roses for the Devil's Whore, which is based off of the Annabel Lee poem of Edgar Allan Poe, apparently about his love of his life that had passed away, and it's kind of like an ode to eternal love after death. And Danny Filth takes this and makes it a much more sexual, erotic sort of story.
Love or hate the guy, he's a very good writer.
Some of the stuff that I thought was cheese for years, to me, just strikes me as really clever. Lyrically, and his puns, his plays on words.
He's kind of like the black metal version of Martin Valkyr from Sabbath.
It's always quirky, and I don't care who you are, to keep a band together since 91 they've been around, 92 maybe,
earliest 90s.
That's a long time, being probably the constant member. I know they had a revolving lineup for years and years, but coming back to this stuff, and even the stuff I heard off their new record, I really liked, and that's what I'm talking about. That's what Danny Filth went off of, I think. And I mean, it's pretty amazing orchestration and stuff they did. That and that Cruelty and the Beast was about the Countess Bathory, I think.
Yeah.
And I like that album too. But there's a whole there's a whole big part of their discography that I have never gone back to. They've got a lot of albums and stuff. So, but going back to it, this was really quality stuff. So, So Edgar Allan Poe, he's popping up in all kinds of band stuff, because why wouldn't he in metal?
Absolutely
kind of fits the subject matter. And I remember that was one of the authors, and maybe it's because I live close to the Eastern Seaboard, that Baltimore area author would be really prominent in stuff that we have to read for English class. Cask of Amontillado, Telltale Heart, Bit in the Pendulum, all that stuff was genuinely cool and creepy, not just something dumb that you don't want to read as a kid. I genuinely enjoyed those stories, and so I think it's really awesome that they've made it into metal. I'm not as nearly as familiar with Manila Road as you guys are.
That's your next unlocking of next time you're here, we're gonna we'll drink some beers and crack open the collection.
Well, it started the last time I was up there. You got me into Crystal Logic and some of the other ones we sat and listened to, and I think you had just gotten new reissues of them, maybe through Hell's Headbangers or somebody. And I did check them out, and they're I mean, you know how it is. There's so much metal out there. It's really hard to keep up.
It's a lifetime of trying to keep up.
there's classics, and then there's new stuff coming out. But discussions like this are, keep that kind of fresh in your mind. So I'll be checking out more of that stuff too, for sure.
Right on. All right, Alan.
Yeah, I'll keep the Edgar Allan Poe train going for a moment, because he's always been a pretty popular author, and again, it's the kind of material I think that appeals to a lot of metalheads, like Aaron was saying. Let's see, Marty, you showed Mystification with Mask of the Red Death, which was one of Poe's. Mask of the Red Death was also done by Crimson Glory on Transcendence.
That's such a good album. It's so good.
Very good album. And yes, they did their rendition of the story of Mask of the Red Death on that one. Crimson Glory also did an H.G. Wells track with War of the Worlds, which was on their Astronomica album, which I don't have. It was the comeback album that did not end up featuring Midnight. You could tell the song was definitely written for his voice. I forget the name of the vocalist they recruited after Midnight couldn't do the album, but that was one of the songs where it really stood out that this album just wasn't written with you in mind to sing some of this stuff. But yeah, so Crimson Glory definitely taps into some different literary sources. But another Poe one for the Telltale Heart that you just mentioned, Aaron, is Deceased did that one as a very chilling heartbeat on supernatural addiction. And of course, Deceased does a lot of songs based on old horror stories and movies and stuff.
Shout out to King.
Shout out
Metallurgist.
Yep. We'll get him back on sometime in the future. He's a busy guy, but
that one came up this week in my mind, and the Poe thing too from the cover.
Yes. Yeah, the cover just screams Poe. Poe's picture is actually there over the
Awesome
mantle place. So, yeah, just more examples of Poe. I will say, just to be completely fair, I thought I had a collection of Poe stories, but I think I gave that one away. Poe has never been my favorite author for that kind of stuff. His stories can be very odd to read because he'll put a lot of detail into certain things and very, very little into other things. For example, like with the Telltale Heart, they talk a lot about the murder and the police interview, and trying to build all the suspense with the freaking out, thinking he's hearing the heart beating. Never tells you why he actually kills the guy. There's no motive for the murder in the whole story. He's like, I killed this guy. And like he even goes out of his way to say, it's not, I don't hate him. I didn't kill him for money or anything. It's just like, so you killed him because of reasons? I don't know. Poe could always just leave out some weird details, and he'd focus on some things in the stories, and other things either weren't explained at all, or some things would be just telegraphed so early in the story that I'm just like, and the guy in the back of the House of Usher is already dead. We know this. Yes, you're the only guy to live in the house. We know this. It takes another 14 pages, but you finally go and check. Oh yeah, the guy's dead. But yeah, still, he's a huge influence on lots of literature and bands. Murders in the Rue Morgue that you mentioned, Aaron, was widely cited as the first modern detective story. Yeah. Sherlock Holmes, all the Agatha Christie novels, draw very heavily on that first depiction of sort of, the modern brainiac genius, private detective imagery that he develops in that story. So yeah, Poe, huge influence for tons and tons of albums. We could probably dig up nothing but Poe references for an entire episode if we dug deep enough. But yeah, so I pulled those as a couple of examples. I had murders in the Rue Morgue pull too, but yeah, you've got that covered. Good job. So thanks. Marty, what do you want to touch on next?
Well, H.P. Lovecraft is no stranger to the metal. For sure. A lot of his tales have been kept alive by the dark side of metallic forces, for sure. Quick, easy grab for me was Sulfur Aeon, swallowed by the ocean's tide. Oops, let me get this straightened around here. As you can see, Cthulhu is on the cover. As far as I know, this whole album is pretty much Lovecraft. I have not read lyrics on this.
Almost every Sulfur Aeon song is Lovecraft.
Yeah, it's Lovecraft.
There may be a couple of exceptions.
In spirit, for sure. Cthulhu writes Incantation, Inexorable Spirits, The Devil's Gorge. And again, it's another band that is a modern death metal leaning band that are very good. One of the best, I think. Oh, what do you got here?
Just the book to go with your record.
Oh, right on. The very dark essence emitting from this material, for sure, is a perfect Lovecraft companion. These guys are awesome. Super great band. And Lovecraft, friend, let me check out some short stories. And wow, again, my reading comprehension isn't crap, but there's a lot of big words I was having to dig out the dictionary for to figure out what the hell he was even saying. So, I mean, and wasn't there a thing between Lovecraft and Howard? They were friends, not friends, kind of like enemies in the press, competitors, I guess I should say.
I'm not sure. I think they had correspondence. I'm not sure. I mean, they were both very obscure in their day, so that would have been one of the saddest rivalries ever. Yeah. Two guys that are competing and nobody cares about either of them.
I mean, the era that these guys are writing, they're writing some dark, fucked up stuff, and it's just amazing for the time where their minds were. I mean, they're very specially touched people to be writing such twisted esoteric tales in the era that they were in, for sure. It certainly was not, weren't they like doing it in like papers, like short stories and papers and stuff, and then it just all kind of
a lot of magazines and
a lot of magazine article,
short story collections, and in what would have been like precursors to graphic novel and comic books from in later decades.
It's kind of amazing.
It's usually referred to as like the pulp era, a lot of pulp fiction.
Yeah, and it's not something that would have been like, a lot of publishers would have been jumping up and down to publish at that time. So they probably had to get the word out via these magazine articles and stuff.
Yeah.
And
those guys were paid almost nothing for writing that stuff. I mean,
No.
Lovecraft lived on, in borderline poverty most of his life, and Howard wasn't much better off.
Yep, and the thing of it is, it's really too bad they can't see, not that this would have been a very shining achievement of their career to see this, but the fact that their writing actually did indeed live on all these decades is pretty incredible. But for those of you that have not checked out Sulphur Aeon, Swallowed by the Ocean's Tide is their debut. Very crushing, fast, dense, very atmospheric death metal. Very good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very much suckling at the teat of Lovecraft for sure.
Yeah, I think they're the I mean, lots of bands do Lovecraft inspired albums or songs or visuals. Sulphur Aeon does it better than anyone else I've seen. All right.
Not heard that stuff.
It's good. Oh, you have not heard it? Yeah. Oh, it's really good stuff.
It's very good. Yeah. While it is technical kind of death metal, it also, I mean, they are very good at keeping it, melodic at times. It has, blackened tinges at times around the edges. The albums vary a little bit, but it's not just like a gore guts kind of experience or something. It's got its own vibe and it's really good.
Rudimentary Peni rule. So good. Good call, Tom. Good call.
Yeah, folks are mentioning lots of cool stuff in the chat. Everybody should keep an eye on that for sure.
All right, Aaron.
Yeah, I had some thoughts on the subject as well. Just real quick. Stranger Eons, Cataclysm, Sorcery. But the one that sticks out, this was the first Morbid Angel that I had. I went back and got Alders later. So a lot of people think this is the weird sounding one, the early stuff kind of, the drums are kind of funky sounding and stuff. But to me, this is like what they sound like, because this is the first thing I had from them. But all these references in here as well, the Ancient Ones and, all the stuff in Unholy Blasphemies. But I was always really confused, this symbol, and it's in that Cataclysm logo too. I think it's the same thing. I'm not real knowledgeable about.
Isn't it something from the Necronomicon?
Yeah, and I'm thinking isn't that something that he references that was kind of made up? And I mean, we had that book when I was 15 or something. It was real taboo.
Mm-hmm.
At the Necronomicon, but I don't know what was in it or whatever, who made that stuff up or what. But when I think about this topic, there's certain lyrical things that pop into my head at random times, and one of them is from Brainstorm. I'm the seer, I know the text divine, thunder words, demons race into my eyes. That's one of the most descriptive lyric lines I've ever heard. I mean, that at any time puts me into another world. If they're talking about reading these demonic texts and things like that, I just wonder, what exactly were they reading? Were they reading Lovecraft? Were they reading these fake books that were
probably all of the above?
Yeah, I think, but they were the masters of descriptive terms. But anyway, that was just a side note. Let me give you something for real here. Kind of off the topic, I guess, of what we were just talking about. This guy. Among the Living.
The Stand. Yep.
Well, not just The Stand. And they tell you right here in the liner notes, good old Anthrax. It says... Yeah, the lyrics to Among the Living are inspired by Stephen King's brilliant novel, The Stand. Covers inspired by the character Randall Flagg. Flagg also was in a book of Stephen King's I read not too long, Eyes of the Dragon. He's like the Merlin type of guy. I'm the Law, It's Judge Dredd.
Yep.
Someone was
And
just asking about that in the chat. Yep.
yeah, Skeleton in the Closet was apt pupil from different seasons, and I actually read that story before I ever had this album. So that was kind of cool to make that connection. I don't think I made it at first, but reading through the liner notes, I like that it says, we like to share this info with our fans so that you can go out and enjoy this stuff for yourselves. Cheers. So that's really cool that they did that. But 2 Stephen King references in this Judge Dredd 2000 AD publications reference in here. So Anthrax was reading some cool stuff as well. So I can point that one out.
I do want to do a little program note here. The third week of June, Phil from Chromium Dioxide Radio is coming on, and we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Anthrax catalog. So get ready for that.
Nice.
I don't know if it's going to be a ranking or what, but he's ready to throw down. He's a very passionate Thrax fan, and he feels the need to defend their honor. Just saying that. So get ready.
He's taking in defense of Anthrax.
Yes.
A few weeks. Yes, it will be a lot of fun.
It'll be good. All right, Alan.
Okay, let's see. I'll do one quick one and then a little longer one. Following up on Lovecraft. Yeah, a lot of the time with the Lovecraft influence, we think more like the death and especially like funeral doom bands kind of gravitate towards that. A lot of people seem to think that's kind of a natural pairing of using this very deep, slow, music to describe these monolithic titans from, outer space and stuff. But you do get some Lovecraft thrown into other styles of metal too. I've talked about this band from time to time. They're just one of my wife and I's favorites. It's Seven Kingdoms, power speed band out of Florida. And this is their 4th album, right, Decennium. And they have a track on here, Rats in the Walls, based on one of Lovecraft's short stories. It is a blazingly good power speed track. It's just channels old school Blind Guardian to a T. And yeah, the lyrics are all about, the guy kind of, going crazy, hearing, these, phantom rats scuttling around in the walls of this old tower and, his descent, down into insanity. So you can get Lovecraft even in speed metal. Power metal is not just happy elves and unicorns dancing around. They do, elder deep ones and stuff sometimes as well. So, but yeah, let's do one other one here. Going back to Blind Guardian. Blind Guardian is drawn on a ton of different literary sources. Tolkien's the one people associate with them the most. They've also, of course, done a great song for Dune. But one from this album that I want to mention. This is Imaginations from the Other Side. Glorious album.
Oh, so good.
And track 4, A Past and Future Secret, very much draws on Arthurian legend as depicted in T.H. White's The Once and Future King. A little bit of a read, but White, it's one of the better depictions of Arthurian legend. He reinvents it in the 14th century as opposed to the 5th or 6th century. And it's one of those big novels from the post-World War II era. It tells a lot about Arthur's upbringing and training by Merlin. This is where you get the whole shtick of Merlin being someone who's living backwards through time so that he's already knows all the future stuff, but he keeps forgetting it because he's getting younger and younger with age while everyone else ages the other way. It's also where you get the different stories of Arthur being turned into different animals to learn different lessons about how to be a good king. Merlin would turn him into, a goose or an ant or other critters so that he could learn things from other points of view. It's an interesting book, and it's, while, a lot of folks would look at it and think just like, yeah, okay, that looks like something my grandma would have on the shelf. It's still a very good contemporary read. One of White's, big themes that comes through in this is, something that people were dealing with a lot in the post-war era was, why do we go to war? Why do these things happen? Is there a good reason for this kind of thing to happen? And one of Merlin's big lessons, for the, future, king of Camelot is that, you should not go to war. There's really only one good reason to go to war. And that's to prevent somebody else from going to war. That, it should not be something that's driven by greed or ego or, territorial disputes or things like that, which of course is a lesson, we could still learn a lot from today. One of the little side notes about it, it's also the book, it's a little thing, but in the first of the X-Men movie adaptations, this is the book that Charles Xavier has the 10-year-old, 12-year-old mutant class reading when you get to the very end of the movie, and everything's, yay, the good guys have won, Magneto's in jail, everything's settled down. And he's kind of, ushering the kids back into the classroom, and he's having them read excerpts from The Once and Future King. And it kind of clicks very clearly with Xavier's philosophy, which is not to, embrace Magneto's war on the non-mutant population. That, Xavier will never go down that path. He has that same attitude on warfare, that it's never going to be the answer. It's not the way to get things done. And so it's kind of, it's a very little thing in the movie, but it ties in. It's the perfect book for him to be assigning as homework, to really get his viewpoint across to his students on why he doesn't feel mutants, should, follow Magneto's lead on the war. So yeah, it's just another one that Blind Guardian pulled in for a song, but ties into a really interesting book that still has a lot of contemporary value even today.
Have you read the Steinbeck book on that stuff?
No, I haven't.
Good stuff. Very good. He said he was fascinated with I can't remember the author's name, somebody that had taken all those Arthurian legends, and it was in not older or Middle English, but archaic English compared to now. And that was his entertainment when he was a kid, was deciphering that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of gave him a mental advantage or whatever. And then later in life, he wrote all those in, I think he said, language that his daughter could understand or something like that, easier to digest for people that aren't into archaic English and stuff. I had no problem reading it. And I'm not familiar with any of those stories, but they were great. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and White's book is kind of like that. Yeah, White, always admitted, he drew heavily on some of the older, written versions of author for what he did. And he also, especially for the first third of the book, he tried to write it in, very straightforward terms that you could use, with kids. Even. Yeah. They could very much, again, the idea of Merlin turning him into these different animals and having little adventures, it's it almost reads kind of something you'd see in a Disney depiction. But as it goes through the book, it gets darker as Arthur grows up, and there's that loss of innocence dealing with Lancelot, Mordred, and all that stuff comes to bear, and kind of the pressures and responsibilities of being an adult and being responsible for an entire kingdom, and how that falls apart over time too.
Okay. Next up for me, if you think about the best-selling book of all time is the Bible. Mm-hmm. Take it as a piece of literature. Some people take their faith as fact. Whatever floats your boat. But we recently did an album club here on this channel regarding this album, Exhumed of the Earth by Mesium.
Oh yeah.
Basically, this album is, the whole thing depicts the Holy Trinity, the Trinity story. There's the birth, the killing, the resurrection, all here. And the thing that got me thinking about this is all the lyrics. I don't know if you can see them. There's Bible verses quoted the whole album is written from the Bible. They're lifted quotes from the Bible, placed into quite an excellent doom metal form. And the fans of My Dying Bride in particular will probably gravitate towards this album. There's this, the first song is probably the best song on here. Violin in there. It's obvious where their inspirations lie, but there's been a million bands that quote the Bible, whether it's a Christian band or a satanic band. Bible's a big influence on metal, and we really couldn't get away from this episode without talking about it. I mean, there's a million bands we could pull up in this avenue for sure. But while this one was fresh on my mind, and when we broke down this record for the album club, I remember digging through the lyrics and actually seeing all the quotes and stuff. So I thought it was a pretty good example for tonight. But this is a solid doom metal album. If you're fans of the early 90s death doom movement, the first couple My Dying Bride releases, the first couple Paradise Lost releases, this is right up your alley for sure. Absolutely great. The main guy in this band is Jason Sherlock, who was in Mortification. He also did the wholly unblack band Horde, which the album Helig Usvart is an amazing black metal album. Unblack album, whatever you want to call it, but great stuff, quoting the Bible directly. So I thought I'd get that in there.
Yeah, that's a good pick for the Bible's one that should be represented, and that's a cool album.
It is. Yep.
Very good stuff. Let me see here. I'm pulling out this album for a couple reasons. Ride the Lightning. This is the copy. I don't know if you remember, Marty, but you took me to that record store down the street from you.
Yep.
Oh, no!
Bastard!
Well,
Bastard!
Hey,
Bastard!
There you go.
But where am I going with this?
Well, there's several places you could go with this.
There is, and I don't know which places you're going, but
Well, I was going to touch on both, but go ahead. We'll compare notes at the end.
I'll do one and you do the other.
All right.
So we already talked about Call of Cthulhu type stuff.
Yep.
For whom
I'm sure you're going to talk about Whom the Bell Tolls. Yes.
Yeah, and there's been several bands that have sung about that. But Spanish Civil War theme. The reason that this came to mind is because their early stuff, I'm not super. I have a couple of the newer ones, but I missed out on some stuff, some of the albums in between. Almost all of their albums in the last 30 years. I missed out, I'll be honest.
I've kept up. It's been rough, but I've kept up.
No offense, Metallica, but the early stuff, the war stuff. This is what got me. Playing guitar was between Slash and seeing the video for one. Okay. You got the guy writhing on the table that has no arms or legs and he can't see or speak or hear or anything. And just thinking of that personal hell. That was from Johnny, get your gun. Johnny's got a gun. Mm-hmm. However you say that. And there's, you could go on to the war theme with them too. I think that Disposable Heroes is the finest of all of them. I think that's the best.
Yeah, I agree.
Ever had. Such an amazing song. But yeah, this one, For Whom the Bell Tolls, is kind of strange because, the book that preceded it, I never really think of that book, the thing it originated from. I just think of the hook of the song and the bass riff in the beginning and stuff. It's like it's Metallica's theme rather than Hemingway. It's like it belongs to Metallica. And it took until this week thinking up examples of this to think, oh, yeah, that's the more famous thing is the book, not the song. That song comes on Sirius XM radio all the time, and it's a great song. But I very rarely think of the book that it came from, nor have I read it. But anyway, I wanted to reference Metallica, Johnny Get Your Gun, and For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yep, good calls.
Sorry, Marty.
That's okay. No, it's fine. So you talked about Johnny's Got. I will reiterate. I was thinking about something else while you're talking, but you mentioned For Whom the Bell Tolls. Did you talk about who that was based on? Who that was inspired by?
That was the Spanish Civil War.
Hemingway. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Hemingway. Yes.
Okay.
But thematically, yeah.
Right on. Okay, Alan, you're up.
All right. Let's see. what to go for. Yes, this for a long time was one of my favorite albums from the 1990s heavy metal. It doesn't come off the shelf nearly as much as it used to, but still a really good listen. Iced Earth's Burnt Offerings, the cover art and the big epic closing track is all about Dante's Inferno. This is the depiction of Lucifer frozen in the ninth circle of hell, which, yeah, in Dante's view was icy, not fiery. You've got Virgil and the pilgrim here in the background, sort of, Virgil's guiding him through the 9 circles of hell that are all spelled out in the epic poem, the Inferno. The Inferno, it's an interesting read. It's, again, buried with, a ton of different references to, all the Greek classics and stuff, but it is an easier read. It's not as long as, Milton or some of the others. And yeah, it has a huge impact on not just pop culture, but a lot of religious thinking down through the centuries. Dante was late 1200s, early 1300s, so 14th century-ish. And also, it was a huge influence on just modern language. He basically invented the Italian language, did a lot to sort of codify the way it was spoken and the way it was written. Before that, apparently it was, kind of a bit scattershot. So, there's a reason that, he's still sort of, considered, one of, if not the, most important, definitely in, the Italian tradition, and beyond that, even in, European and Western traditions. It's also just amazingly good fodder for heavy metal material. Other bands have, done this as well. There's a Texas death metal band called Crucifixion that did a song called Woods of the Suicides, which, is one of the earlier levels of hell. It's second or maybe third. Some of the levels are subdivided. Dante, I'm not going to say he cheats a little bit, but sometimes one circle might have, 3 subdivisions or, 7 subdivisions. Even the 9th circle that Lucifer is stuck in has at least 3 subdivisions, as I recall. Iced Earth, completely nail it. It's one of the best, sort of long form epic songs a metal band has done. It's right up there with like Rime of the Ancient Mariner in terms of taking a literature source, building it out into this big long song, and not only doing a great song structure, but also really doing a great job of nailing the essential qualities of the literary work that they're drawing from too. The rest of the album is pretty kick-ass as well, but yeah, that song is, as far as I'm concerned, it's Iced Earth's towering achievement. The work they put into making that all come together is right up there maybe with the work that Dante put into writing this thing. Maybe not quite there, but it's still pretty good for sure. So yeah, definitely wanted to mention that one. You don't hear that one mentioned as much with Iced Earth's discography. A lot of people got into Iced Earth a little bit later, and as such, I feel like Burnt Offerings sometimes gets a bit forgotten or overlooked because a lot of folks came on board with like the next album, Dark Saga, that it had the comic book cover art, tie-ins and all that kind of stuff going for it. But so yep, Dante and Iced Earth. That's what I've got for this pick. Marty, what have you got for your next one?
Well, this one here is a bit of a stretch, but I just wanted to talk about this album. But we're going to talk about the Lord Weird Sluffeg's Traveler. The album itself is based off the RPG game called Traveler, but you read an interview with Mike. If you want to, this is a quote, if you want to understand the new album, read Elford Bester's The Stars Are My Destination, because it's the best fiction book I've ever read. It's science fiction for real men. So loosely inspired by that book and based basically around the Traveler RPG game. Probably out of all the records I own, all the metal music I own, this is a top 50 album in my collection. Why is that? Well, this is a 100 out of 100 riff album. Every single riff on this album is a goddamn masterpiece. Have you heard this, Aaron?
No, I've not.
I've
never
crap.
seen that really awesome cover too.
Yeah, it's also, it looks like back in the day when I was younger, I had a few comics by an Alien Legion was the name of the comic series. Looks like one of the characters from that, but I don't think it's I think it's just a.
What was the book called again?
Well, the book, the science fiction direction of the band was inspired by "The Stars Are My Destination" by Alfred Bester.
Stars Are My Destination. That's cool.
Yeah.
But this is an amazing album, and Lord Weird Slufveg have always been a very unique band in the traditional metal scene. Their early works for me up through this album are all completely amazing. This is probably the climax of that creative push. Like I said, there is not a bad riff on this album. This is a perfect riff album, 100 out of 100. But I just grabbed it because I knew there was a loose connection with science fiction. I knew there was an RPG element here. The whole thing, there's a lot of words. There's a big overblown story where you read it. It's super huge. There's characters. It's a humongous concept album. This is a huge undertaking of an album, but it's very easy to listen to because the riffs are written in a very free. There's a lot of great movement in the pieces. Like I said, every riff is golden. It's amazing. If you can get by Mike's somewhat atypical singing style, you're going to love this band. And if you like this album, I would also recommend Twilight of the Idols. I was also recommend Down Among the Dead Men, or such a great, so good. But Traveler, this is an amazing album. Tipping their hat to the sci-fi world for sure.
Yep. Yeah, it's easily my favorite Slufveg album, and even the name of the album. I'm going to geek out on it for just a moment, if that's okay.
Go for it. I'm glad I threw it out there. Then I knew I was stretching it, but I had to have something in there.
No, it works well. But Traveler the name comes from an old role-playing game system. It was basically the sci-fi equivalent of Dungeons and Dragons that came out around the same time, late 70s, early 80s time frame.
Spinward Marches, is that it? No.
The Spinward Marches is that's part of the setting for the Traveler universe. But obviously D&D went on to become world renowned. The Traveler game, it never quite got, it had its following, but it kind of fizzled out over time. But it works very similar to D&D. You're rolling up characters, but it's all in this sci-fi universe built around the Spinward Marches. Everything they talk about, the whole story on that album, all the different races, they're the different races and classes of character that you could build in the game, with those weird human-dog hybrid things shown on the cover as one of the main races of antagonists. It had a very much kind of a Star Wars feel to it. A lot of the technology is big and slow as opposed to like small and fast. Like in Star Wars, you never see a whole lot of nanotechnology kind of stuff. You see these, spaceships, the size of a small moon. And Traveler was built kind of similar to that. But yeah, so that's some of the backstory. It was also tangentially, Marty, I know you're a Firefly fan, and
Love it.
Traveler was one of the big things that Joss Whedon wanted to draw on a little bit when he was depicting the Alliance, because they always have those huge monolithic ships and stuff.
Yeah.
He was drawing a little bit on the Traveler imagery for that. In fact, I think it's the pilot episode, the first time that they're taking off in Mal's ship, the pilot guy turns around and says to the rest of them, "Okay, travelers, let's go." And that line is a very direct reference to the name of the RPG system, because it's one that Whedon, had a strong connection to. Okay, I'll go get my 20-sided dice while Aaron shows us something much cooler.
Aaron, the album is on Spotify, so I don't know if you're a Spotify user. Definitely dial it up. You're going to love it. It's such a good, well-written album. So good.
Nechochwen is on there. I've never used it. I'm really behind.
I love it. I hate to say it, but I love it, man. I subscribe to it. It's so good.
You've really gotten into it. I have Bandcamp on my phone, but most of the time you see what I have.
James, I don't think Abrams was associated with Firefly, was he? I don't think so.
I don't remember him being associated, but he could have been, and I'm
maybe in the movie Serenity. I mean, I don't know. I know
that's
Whedon
a possibility.
Directed and wrote all the dialogue. I mean, That's the thing I love about Firefly and Serenity is the dialogue. It's so smart and witty and sharp. It's so good. Anyway, Aaron's up next.
What?
This is a dork. This is a dork episode, and we love it.
I'm really surprised that this topic has not come up yet.
It was
You're
a
gonna pull out
fantastic
Iron
topic.
Maiden. I'm coming down there kicking the balls.
What is it? Something else?
Iron Maiden Power Slave, right?
I didn't pick that one out. What? Oh, I can think of why you would say that. No, this is kind of an evolutionary thing here. So bear with me for a minute. But
I gotta pee. Be right back.
Right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Crowley, however you're supposed to say it.
Yep.
He says it Crowley, whatever. Started thinking about that. She's a author, but I don't think that there are any direct references to like his works or anything. Just about him, and the way that this stuff is attributed on here is who wrote the songs. Bob Daisley, Ozzy, and Randy on this one. So, I'm starting thinking, I can't see Randy being like super into this philosophy. I don't know. I didn't know him, obviously. Ozzy, lyrics like, was it polemically sent? It just doesn't feel like Ozzy lyrics. It feels like This was Bob Daisley writing this stuff. If I'm wrong on that, I'm wrong on that. But it got me thinking, well, it kind of sucks that I don't know what that was directly inspired by. So it got me thinking in another related direction is these guys, to Megatherion, the great beast, right? So very much influenced. This imagery is so cool. These gatefolds. But got me to a specific reference of like, well, what were these guys reading by him, by Aleister Crowley? Which brings me to this one.
Killer album. Their best.
It's pretty amazing.
Well, it's their best shot at being an art piece.
This one's my favorite, probably. I would have to say.
I'm more morbid than that.
I like, that one's pretty killer as well.
Monopiece takes a big shit on Into the Pandemonium for sure. It's more focused, more creative. That they finally achieved the art piece that they thought that they did with Into the Pandemonium. That album is just a train wreck. I'm sorry, it just is. Anyway, go ahead.
I still enjoy it. I have that record too, and I got the Vanity Nemesis like I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. I never had that one before, and I don't like it as much, even though it's cool. Was that true? Ozzy didn't write a single lyric on any album. Wow. Well, I could kind of tell from reading those lyrics, it didn't feel like it was from Ozzy. But anyway, the song that I found on this Ossa Bismi Vel Doth, and the notes on here, Aleister Crowley, the infamous magician, self-proclaimed to Megatherion, has once again been one hell of a holy guru to Celtic Frost. In this case, wisdom came in the form of one of his texts. This big, long text here. Being the complete title of the work, Crowley states that this book is the gate of the secret of the universe, and from there on suggests that the following instructions one should, through the study of Kant, Hume, Spencer, Huxley, Crowley, Hegel, Sutas, and by the use of reason, consider the origin of the world, the origin of evil, infinity, the absolute, the ego, and the non-ego, free will, destiny, and so on. So he goes on and talks about some stuff that I really don't understand very well. But the bottom line is they talk about, well, you were talking about the Kabbalah earlier. This term doth, he says, and I know that I still do not understand how doth did literally not make the lyrics of this song. They took this text to lyrically enter the abyss on a rather elusive level. Elusive as in A-L, not E-L. This is Martin Eric Ain. Anyway,
Rest in
monotheist,
peace.
for sure. And I just really enjoy this album, but it's not like everyday listening by any stretch.
That's
and I
fair.
like con stuff too. I think it's tuned down a little more than this.
Yep.
I was just like really struck when I got this, that I might have got this from you actually years ago, Marty. I don't know if I bought this at the store or if I ordered this from you, but the down tuning really threw me off at first. Like, whoa, they really tuned down for this. But anyway, reference to Crowley, however you say it. And so I guess there's a connection there with an Aussie song too, which is where I first learned about who that man was. Probably most of us was through that song, and it's still on the radio like all the time.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Good pick.
Yep.
Good pick.
Good.
Thanks, Celtic Frost.
Yeah.
All right, Alan.
Yeah, following up, I had picked something for Crowley as well, but I picked Behemoth.
Oh yeah.
Behemoth does a lot of. They do the same thing you do with your liner notes, and that they always write these synopses for each of the songs, so that Nurgle can explain what particular weird arcane text or whatever he's drawing for that. And for in a lot of cases he draws on Crowley very heavily for a lot of the different songs. Again, I've never read any of Crowley's original stuff. Some people get very into him. Obviously, a lot of people also just consider him, a little more than a con artist, who is, able to, very good at selling people on weird ideas and dipping into their pockets. But it's at least interesting material. Again, it makes good fodder for heavy metal material, even back to the days of Led Zeppelin that you showed earlier, Aaron. Jimmy Page in particular is always a big Crowley fanatic. If I remember right, he bought Crowley's house on Loch Ness at one point. So that's when you're diehard right there. You're hardcore when you go buying the mansion of the dude from 100 years ago.
That's the diehard edition.
Yes, comes with the original mortar and cinder blocks from the sub basement where he had his tea or whatever.
It was rumored to be haunted too.
I think everything in England is, isn't it?
Yeah, probably.
Especially on Loch Ness.
Just going to throw out there's a broad thing, yes. But yeah, so Behemoth, another good one full of Crowley-isms for sure. But yeah, something different. This one comes up from time to time. I think I like the album a lot more than most folks do. But Ulver, after doing some black metal masterpieces, took a weird sort of turn in this material with this book, William Blake's kind of short form poem, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. This one's much easier to read, much shorter, but still very good. Blake plays around a lot with sort of inverting different ideas of good and evil and man and all this stuff. So it's an interesting read. It's just he was pretty prolific. I've got another volume with a lot of his other poetry and stuff over there. Basically they just take this and just directly put it to it's still has traces of metal in it, but it's also getting a lot more into electronic beats and things. I thought it was really interesting. I played the hell out of this when it came out back in the day. Obviously I liked the earlier Ulver stuff too, but I thought this was still a really interesting take, maybe in part because I also really enjoyed Blake's writing. But it was kind of a neat idea to just literally read the entire thing over 70 some odd minutes worth of this unusual musical style. That's why it's also divided up into plates. Blake originally had this published as a series of lithographic plates that were illuminated and such. There's one of them redepicted in this little paperback version. So not Ulver's most popular work, but I think it's still a pretty cool one and a good Blake reference, which not a lot of other Blakeisms popped to mind besides The Marriage of Heaven.
Frozen up.
Frozen in time.
Yes.
Over's the one I like the Virgin Steel albums, but tonight I figured I'd pull the Over album because that one doesn't get a whole lot of love most nights.
No. I was going to pull that album, but I forgot I sent it to Devin because I hate it so much. But anyway. Oh, I'm next. Okay. I'm going to try to do a little screen share here because I couldn't find my promo of this. But let's talk about, let me see if I can get this figured out. Google. Oh, I don't know. Nope, that's not it. Dang it. Bear with me, folks. Technology and the elderly just never.
I'll be back in just a second while you're doing that.
Well, here we go. Chrome tab. Here we go. Is that showing up, Alan?
Let me see here.
Yep.
Yes, you got. Yep.
So we're going to talk about Ahab, the Call of the Wretched Sea. Basically, this is a doom, very funeral doomish band. Where are they from? I can't remember. They are from,
I do not recall,
Germany. But yes, a German band, very much influenced by the classic literature of Herman Melville. In this album's instance, Moby Dick, obviously, the band is named after Captain Ahab, main character in the Melville books. Very interesting take on literature in metal, for sure. Not a very well-traveled area, for sure. But doom for me, I've said it here time and time again, I need to be in the mood for it, and I'm rarely in the mood for it. I do like it, but this band, this album in particular, I always found to be quite crushing. They do it very well. They're very good at keeping the listener interested, and they don't fall into these boring passages. It's very much a very suffocating. I never could get that figured out. Anyway, it's a very suffocating feel, but the riffs are very good, very heavy. Excellent doom band. Again, Herman Melville, classic writer for sure. I remember reading Moby Dick in school, so I mean he made it into academia for sure. You know, teaching the next generation about literature. But Ahab are great. They've got multiple albums that are inspired by the Melville mythology for sure. That was a band that popped up really quickly on my radar when we were discussing this topic for sure.
Yeah, good pick. Wade and some others were hoping for Ahab to come up earlier in the chat. So Marty delivering the goods. Yeah. I tried reading Moby Dick. That's when I got halfway through and I just quit. I'm just like, I cannot read another chapter that explains in excruciating detail how a 19th century, Boston, Nantucket whaling ship operates. I don't fucking care which sail that is. I just lost it. The other thing too that I just can't think about that book without like hearing in my head in Bruce Dickinson's voice, "This is what not to do if a whale takes your bloody leg off." That's like the whole moral of the story right there. Okay, I don't need to read the whole. It's like reading the fucking instruction manual to a sailing vessel. Which, I mean, it's cool in detail, but damn, it's hard to get through.
All right. Aaron, you're up.
I'm going to show you a magic trick that I can make a coffee and Moby Dick appear out of nowhere.
You're a genius. Genius.
You can see, Alan, here's how far I made it through that.
That's about how far I got into the Silmarillion.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I'll try again. But this is the one that I thought of.
Oh yeah, Mastodon Leviathan.
Mastodon. And I jammed this a little bit today, and it's got great riffs. I'm not a huge Mastodon fan. It's good stuff. I remember it was very highly revered when it came out, and I remember it was like that cable music choice videos things that was big like around 2005 2006, and I saw the video for Blood and Thunder, And I remember I was a little drunk, and I saw that drummer, the stuff he was doing. I was like, man, that drummer's amazing. So I went out and bought this, and it's the only thing by Mastodon I've ever owned. But Moby Dick reference. But anyway, you got that covered there. I have a very strange one here. I guess a strange reference, but it's relevant to myself in a way. It's this record, Strapato.
Yep.
Heavy ass record.
Yeah.
1987, Diabolic Force Records. And
Did you get that from Dave?
I did not.
Oh, the other guy, your other friend that was getting rid of all this stuff. Yeah.
Matt, yes.
Yep.
And he kept this stuff in like
Pristine condition, man.
It's like I need to get a poly sleeve on some of these. But I got to dig into these classic records that I never had. And I think he would take these and tape them, like play it once and tape it and put the record on the shelf. And then, 30 years later, sold them.
That record's probably worth some money. You should probably get a sleeve for it.
I probably should. I have like really shitty records with sleeves on them. I could probably take it off of one of those and put it
Take
on.
it off that Led Zeppelin and put it on that one.
I don't think Led Zeppelin doesn't have one. This is my second copy of Led Zeppelin 2, and the other one looks like it was in somebody's like basement flood.
Use it to sop up the flood, yeah.
Exactly. You know how it like expands the cardboard and
Yeah.
falling out the side. This does not look like that. This looks like wonderful. But anyway, the reason I'm even showing this record is the first, the title track, Strapato, inspired by A History of Torture. It's a book by George Riley Scott that I was not familiar with. But Strapato, I think we see that being enacted by these reanimated skeleton corpses on the cover as a torture method. So I was thinking, that's some pretty disturbing, inspirational stuff. Like who would read about torture to write a song based on it? And then I remembered that I have this in my collection. So I can kind of relate to these guys. On the first record we did, Algonquian Mythos, there's a song called Katahotha, which is basically a native term for being tortured and then burned at the stake. And I remember playing it at the Heathen Crusade where I met Marty.
Yep.
First I met him and Tanner Anderson as well.
From Obsequii, Celestial.
Yes. And all kinds of other characters at that place.
Yep.
There was some really good bands on that bill. But I remember I was set up and playing these, playing classical guitar with all these people like kind of sitting on the floor, like library story time or something in between these bands. And I said, I wrote a classical piece based off of torture, a native torture method. I don't know if that's ever been done, but it's something I wanted to do. And I was like, man, that probably sounds really weird. So I have stuff like that in my literary collection. And obviously this band does too, because their title track of this classic Strapato record was inspired by George Riley Scott's A History of Torture.
Right on. Did not know that.
I didn't either. Yeah, some other folks in the chat were mentioning that, they didn't expect to see a Strapato album come out tonight, but that's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. Fine literary work. History of Torture.
Yeah. I mean, if you really just need to torture somebody, just make them listen to, Poison's "Look What the Cat Dragged In" over and over. You don't have to, get so, fancy and brutal with it.
Yeah.
I on a car ride, if I forget to bring some music or don't want to hook up Spotify, I put on hair nation once in a while when the Ozzy's Boneyard and the other one is crap. And it is shocking how much Poison is on there. It's rough. It is.
Yeah.
And there's like very little redeeming quality to that shit. It's so bubblegum bullshit. It's so tough, man.
Yeah,
It's so tough.
poison's bad even by those standards.
Yeah, I mean, you got to try tough. I know that, but
yeah, especially you can tell too when Keith Roth is on for Hair Nation because the poison tracks will flow. Wow,
Yeah.
Keith has some pretty good taste overall, but he's got a soft spot for Bret Michaels that I can't follow him there.
No.
Yeah, we were on there earlier today, and I had to flip through there. I like hearing White Lion sometimes, and I like when they have Queensrÿche on there. That's about the only two bands that I like that come on that channel. And I usually flip through most of it.
Eric, I know you dabble in some of the hair metal stuff, and some of it's pretty damn killer. But wow, I'm a little shocked seeing you post this up here.
Let's stick to Hanoi Rocks, please, Eric. Come on now. Standards, Eric. Standards.
All right, Alan, you're up.
All right. Well, since Aaron kind of took a dark turn and went all torture on us, let's get back to the OG torture masters. Ruins of Bevrast, Blood Vault is inspired by
such a great record.
Really good record, really great band. And this one is inspired by the Malleus Maleficarum, which was the book written by Heinrich Kramer and first published in 1486. That basically describes in excruciating detail how you are supposed to interrogate and kill witches.
Yep.
This became the sort of, in pop culture, it's thought of as like, the handbook of the Inquisition in terms of, how you handled witchcraft moving forward. The funny thing about, some of it when you dig into it a little bit is, Kramer was repeatedly kicked out of different, I'm not sure parish is the correct term for that period in history, but he was, sort of repeatedly booted out of different areas he was assigned to work with the clergy for one, just being a fucking freak. People caught on pretty quickly that this guy was not in his right mind, and so they would run him off. But yeah,
the Catholic Church thought he was A-okay because he was killing lots of women. And women were scary to the Catholic Church back in the day.
Well, even in a lot of cases, though, I mean, they would throw out cases this guy was, attempting to try because they realized, what you're arguing here is just batshit crazy. It's kind of funny. The guy that wrote the book on how to kill them, if you were accused of witchcraft, this was probably actually the guy you wanted to see on the other side of the courtroom because a lot of his cases fizzled because he just was in the nuts. But regardless, down through the ages, somehow the book stuck around and, did have an overt influence on later generations when the witchcraft, stuff got, bigger again in later centuries. But yeah, it's kind of weird. Kramer was sort of a bit of, iconoclast, and that's probably putting it nicely for his day and age. Later editions had another author added, which apparently is kind of dubious. No one's really clear that person really had anything to do with the book. But it's what the main I forget his name, but yeah, I mean, Ruins is basically a one-man project, and he used that as inspiration for yet another one of his really crushingly heavy, dark albums. Excellent, amazing band. You can find lots of other random references to Malleus Maleficarum, or the rough translation being Hammer of the Witches. Will pop up in other metal songs and track titles here and there. But if we're going to torture people, let's just go ahead burn them at the stake. Kramer was the one who had basically proposed elevating witchcraft to a crime equivalent to heresy. That apparently before that it was bad, but it wasn't. It wasn't Monty Python. She's a witch, burn her. Bad. It was
burn the witch.
It was put them in jail, flog them a little bit, and let them go about their business bad. And this was the guy that really kind of ramped it up to high crime against everything. There's a weird backstory to that guy, and how seriously he wasn't necessarily taken at the time, but how it still ended up having a big impact on things later down the road.
Right on.
All right, Marty, let's toss it over to you. What you got?
All right. I'm really grabbing at straws here, but we're going to talk about Grotesque's The Embrace of Evil. The album, this band featured Tompa from At the Gates, Thomas Lindbergh. Also, Shamati from Arcanum was a drummer in this band for a while. But I'm basically going off of the song Incantation, which was loosely inspired by Michael Moorcock's Elric universe. Never read it, heard of the author. This is something I pulled up last minute on the internet, so bear with me here, folks. I have nothing more to say other than this Grotesque material is really, really, really great. Before black metal was a thing, this was kind of in that realm. Still kind of clinging to the Swedish fast melodic death metal spirit somewhat, but excellent stuff. Predates At the Gates.
What's that a split with? Gardens of Grief?
Yeah, this is a Century Media reissue.
Yeah, you burned that for me one of the times I was up there in Traverse City, and I loved that CD actually. I ended up getting Gardens of Grief like a vinyl repress years later, but I never had an actual copy of that Grotesque. That was really cool stuff, and I didn't know it was based off of a book or anything.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a connection on that one either. That's cool.
I guess Moorcock also inspired some things on At the Gates as well, but I was in a rush and I didn't dot all my I's and cross all my T's. So, okay, Aaron,
this actually might be my last one that I have in my stack. I think I kind of combined a couple of those, like the Metallica ones and such. Seems like every time I do something like this, I reference this band, but Amorphous.
Mm-hmm.
It's a favorite of mine, and if anyone's unfamiliar with what they did with this record and the one after it, is they based these albums and the lyrics off of their national poetry of Finland, the Kalevala. For this album, and another book, the Cantiletar for Elegy, which I have the CD of Elegy, but not the case. I have this EP, my Cantale, which is like Finnish national instrument or something, a zither, lyre, harp type of thing. I think later on, if you look at that, it's like Magic and Mayhem. I don't own it. It's got like a big pike swimming or jumping or something on the cover, and yeah, I think it references this stuff too, because it might be like reworkings of old songs. But anyway, that's beside the point. I just remember being so into. I don't know if I have it here. I do. This one is on pretty regular rotation after 30 years. Real Anismus is probably
classic.
Overall my favorite record of theirs to listen to, even though, there's some fantastic stuff on a lot of these records. But the picture, at least it was on a CD of them, on those first two albums, they look like they're 15, 16 years old.
They were.
I thought they were pretty young, Yeah. And to be seriously delving into your national poetry and dedicating all that time and recording, and you're signed to Relapse Records, and it says in the lyrics here, traditional. They're not even writing lyrics based off of this. They're taking lyrics directly from those books and crafting. I guess you still call this death metal. For the most part,
they started to get proggy, but yeah, it is.
They did, but it's doomy and death metal basically. To be making these albums based off of that stuff, I think of not to sound like grandpa here, but people that age now, like I try to get a kid to get like off his phone off the couch and like go create something cool. It's like a struggle. These guys were doing some really impressive stuff to honor their country, and at a very young age, and it just impressed me and inspired me. And Elegy as well. I mean, I think that's a really good album. I put it at third out of those three, but I think there's some really good stuff on that too.
I think it's cool to note that Kalevala is Finland is not really considered a Scandinavian country. They're just considered a northern country. Scandinavia is Norway, Sweden, Denmark. And their traditions, their religious stuff is different than the Norse. I mean, there's some similarities, I think, in some of the tales, but and I think there were Finnish Vikings, but they had different. I think the Swedes and the Norwegians saw the Finns as weird. The Finns saw the early Finns saw a lot of mystical things in forests. They believed in magical stuff, and I think the other people of the northern countries saw them as a bit strange, which is probably true. But yeah, kind of cool. It's kind of cool that the band grasped onto that book of tales for sure. It's definitely a unique voice.
Yeah, I think it was inspiring for me to, write stuff that you could write liner notes about, that you could say, here's something, we're from a country that not everybody knows a lot about. And here, this getting out to the world. And now I know about Karelia. Now I know about, these stories about, on a great pike's shoulders and all this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Song, The Water Dog's Hooked Bones, it's talking about that instrument, making that instrument out of like nature elements. And it's just cool, no matter what country you're from. But like, I think of my region as like a small, not a country, but like a micro region that is a bit overlooked in the world. And I want to point that out to the world, stuff about where I'm from. And they totally did that to great effect. So yeah, that's one of my big choices for this is those first few Amorphous albums. Amazing stuff.
It was very cool coming down and visiting you when we went to the first Decibel Beer and Metal Fest. We're driving through your area, and I live up here in northern Michigan, and there's history here, but there's a lot of native history. Right, but there, I mean, you're like, oh yeah, this is the area Johnny Appleseed lived here, and we're going through the back roads to get to the turnpike or wherever the hell we were going to get to Philly. And it just reminded me, it just seems so cool to you live in a place where history happened, shit that we've read about in school and names and George Washington came right through this valley here on his way, heading west when he was mapping and all this crap. And I'm just like, wow, kind of weird that, you're basically living where giants walked, essentially,
Yeah. I grew up thinking that the really old house next to the house I grew up in, it's on the National Register of Historic Places, that George Washington slept there. And then I found out that it was built in 1840 and he died in 1799. So it's like,
oops. Bullshit. Yeah. Anything to get the tourists to stop, right?
But it's called Washington Pike, and he totally came through there, and that's true. That was the road down to the river where I live now.
I remember by that area we stopped at a gas station where I bought cheese curds and cigarettes. Anyway, that wasn't very historical, but it was fun, and we had a good time. That was a good trip.
Yeah, I don't remember where that was. That's probably Sheets or something.
It was probably in Sheets, fucking Sheets. Anyway, Alan, you're up.
Yeah, great pick, Aaron. I'm actually a quarter Norwegian and a quarter Finnish, so I got all kinds of weird shit floating around inside me.
Britkinen's my last name. I'm pretty Finnish.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know a lot about that side of the family. Those grandparents both died. But I remember my grandmother telling some stories about my grandfather. The grandfather was the Finnish one, and she would tell stories with them. They both immigrated to New York as very little kids in the early 20th century, so kind of the classic Ellis Island kind of period. And she would tell stories that with grandpa and his Finnish friends nobody else, in Brooklyn understood anything those guys did whatsoever. The Finnish language is apparently very different from a lot of the other Norwegian languages that if you know some of those languages, you can hack your way through some of the others a little bit. Finnish is a completely different species, apparently.
I guess Finn has got the Finnish language is a lot more in common with Hungarian than it is with the Nordic dialect.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know the basics. We had a lot of trouble because when my grandfather died and trying to go through all his papers and stuff, well, it turned out he had most of it he had kept in Finnish, which of course nobody else in the family could read whatsoever. So we had I know my mom and her siblings and my grandma, they had a hell of a time getting through his estate because nobody could read the damn notes that went with anything.
Yeah, my great grandparents on my dad's side, Swanee and Sigfra Ritkinen, came from Finland and resided in the Marquette area of the northern peninsula of Michigan for mining. And he said they didn't speak any English. He said they spoke 100% Finn. And he said Swanee was a rotten, ornery bastard that was crazy and drank too much. I'm like, oh, I guess I see it.
Sounds like my grandpa.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You're up, Alan.
All right. Well, yeah, Moorcock came up a moment ago, and there's a couple of key touchstones there, of course. Keir Thungle has always used depictions of Moorcock's Elric on all their album covers. Getting to be that time, isn't it? But the guys in Keir Thungle have always had Michael Whalen do their amazing cover art, and it's always depictions of Elric, usually with Stormbringer, doing cool, epic stuff.
Very cool.
And as Tim Saunders pointed out in the chat a couple of minutes ago, Moorcock actually wrote a kind of heavy metal song. He did co-author some stuff with the guys in Blue Oyster Cult. And
good album.
The first track on, well, maybe. More about that another time. I don't care for this one much myself. But the lyrics to Black Blade are not just about Elric. They're written by Moorcock for the band. He has, a songwriting credit. I think he did one more on here too, but I'm drawing a blank on which. May have been on a different track. But Moorcock, was another one of those, big pulp, fantasy sword and sorcery writers. That's you see Moorcock references pop up all the time without even knowing it. Deep Purple's Stormbringer. That's a Michael Moorcock reference. Anything involving the names Elric or Melibon or stuff, they're all, they all relate back to Moorcock's writings. I read one or two of his books in the Elric series. It wasn't one that really hooked me. I read it at a little bit, I was older when I first tried reading those, and it was okay, but it very much did feel sort of like pulp fantasy. Sometimes there were interesting descriptions of things going on, but there'd be big chunks of the story that would just happen off camera. Like you got to, I know, towards the end of the first book, he defeats the big arch villain, and everything is settling down in the kingdom. And then just like the next paragraph, oh, by the way, the arch villain that you just beat, he just escaped, and he just killed your mother, sister, best friend. He just killed somebody really important. And even though we're like this very isolated, xenophobic, elf nation, he somehow has completely skipped town, and we have no idea where he went. Sorry. We're just like, wait, what? All this happened, and you're going to summarize it in 2 sentences? What the fuck? That's a major plot point. I had some issues working on reading Moorcock, but a huge influence nonetheless. Another one that folks have liked a lot over the years, and I've never read much of this guy's work, but Ray Bradbury, big sci-fi author, beloved by tons of folks. Bradbury, of course, has gotten the heavy metal treatment as well. And in fact, Royal Hunt, their album The Mission, is mostly at least a concept album based around the Martian Chronicles, which he published in the early 1950s.
There's a show made about that too.
Yep, the Martian Chronicles is considered one of his. It's definitely one of his more famous works. It's sort of again a colonization of humans going to Mars, but it's also a little dark. It's similar to T.S. White that we talked about earlier. It's that post-war outlook of, man, humans really do fuck things up, and maybe we should stop, fucking things up. Because, it's, tells the tale of humans going to Mars and then ruining Martian culture. And of course, the whole reason we went there is because we had already fucked up everything on Earth really bad. So, yeah, but it's, still a very popular sci-fi author. I haven't read it, so I'm just giving a real brief synopsis. But Royal Hunt is, they lean more on the progressive side of power metal, but it's still very song-based. Yeah, it's not, complete Dream Theater wankery kind of material. They've done a lot of very, very good.
Uh-oh.
Colin's gonna sneeze.
It looked like he was dreaming of Moorcock there for a second. You froze. Your screen froze. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. The connection's a little jumpy tonight. But the Royal Hunt is definitely a cool band to check out if you don't mind a little bit of prog mixed into your power metal structures.
I do want to ask, before we move on here, there was a time there'll be times, years I won't read a book, but when I do, and I find a series I like, that's all I will do. That's why I don't read much, is because when I do, I become obsessed, and I just do every free moment I'm reading the book. I'm not working, I'm not doing anything. But I got into a 2-month period. I read 15 books by Salvatore, I want to say. He did the Dark Elf trilogy. R.A. Salvatore. Yeah. Is there any bands inspired by that you guys know of?
What is it, question. Marty?
R.A. Salvatore. He did Drizzt, the Dark Elf trilogy, and he did a bunch of books.
Yeah, a lot of his stuff is from the Forgotten Realms D&D spin-off.
Yeah,
they're really fun but easy reads. So I just crushed the books. A week I'd be 2 books in. I'd crush books like nothing.
Yeah, I read a ton of the Drizzt books back in the day. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any band that's done like a drow based song or something. It would be good material for a band if they wanted to tackle it. I don't know. Chat, help us out with that one. Any Salvatore stuff? He has done other story series too that have nothing to do with Forgotten Realms. So maybe one of those has been picked up and turned into something. We'll see what the chat can come up with here in the next few minutes. That's a good question, Marty.
Then you've got bands like Sirius Black that are J.K. Rowling Harry Potter series inspired.
I had no idea.
They're a power metal band. I think I snippeted a couple songs that wasn't up my alley, but
I can't get into the Harry Potter, man.
The Harry Potter's pretty awesome. My wife worships that stuff. It's quite good.
I've seen maybe like one of the movies, and I can't really get into it.
Yeah. My son likes it a lot, so I'm exposed to it through that. But I was never interested in it when it was coming out. I watched the movies, but even like a lot of my friends in college, whenever one of those books was coming out, they'd go camp out in front of the bookstore overnight. I'm just like,
popular.
Yeah, I'm just like, dude, that book's like written for a 10-year-old. Really? I'll take your word for it, but I ain't going to read the damn thing. and now I'm reading some of them to Dean as a bedtime.
Wasn't that Aleister the something wicked this way? Isn't that a Bradbury reference as well? Maybe I'm wrong.
It's a reference to something. I don't remember if it's Bradbury or not, but yeah, that's a good call.
Brought that up.
Again, let's chat. Help us out there. What's the original reference for something wicked? When I was a kid, it was one of those weird B-rate Disney movies with live actors that
I remember that as well. Yeah, they'd have some creepy stuff on there.
Isn't Eternal Champion's name from some fantasy book? Yeah, I don't know.
Could be. It's such a generic name. I don't know for sure though. They obviously draw pretty heavily on the Conan and Howard imagery we talked about earlier.
TJ, what's up, TJ? All right, I'm up. This is my last one, and I saved the most obvious for last, thinking someone else here would show it. But we got Maiden's Power Slave. Mm-hmm. Maiden, Bruce has been very much Bruce and Steve pulled from literary greats throughout their entire discography. But Rime of the Ancient Mariner is based on Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Is it a poem or a short story? I don't remember, but that's the obvious one on here. It's very much an iconic song, great song, great adaptation of the story for sure. And not only is it a great adaptation lyrically, the music. There's that point in the middle, that long break where it's just the bass line and the little volume swells. You feel like a boat just kind of floating on a dead sea. You know, nothing happening, no rain, no nothing, creaking back and forth. The whole how Steve took the concept of the story and actually put it to music as well as lyrics. It's quite inspiring how that song is written. I mean, this is an eternal classic album, and a band at the top of their game for sure, world dominance more or less. But it's shown that they were, you know, very highbrow thinkers when it came to their lyrics, and that transferred into their music quite effortlessly, which made Maiden what they are today. I mean, they're a legacy band. They're a legacy band that is still productive. They're still putting out new music. There's people still love the new music. Yeah, Maiden. That was an obvious one.
I don't think they've touched that level of epicness or whatever.
Oh, somewhere in time though, man. That's I think my favorite.
Well, I mean, for like a long track, they've had some long tracks like that.
Yeah,
High in the Clouds and stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty cool stuff. But I don't know. It's just so well done for that one. Yeah, that was one of the first things. I think even when I texted you the idea for that was one of the first ones.
Yeah,
you know, Coleridge with Maiden. You could go to Tame a Land as well. And you know, a lot of this stuff I didn't know about before, but I will say that's an exception because I think Dune came out the movie, not the book. The movie came out when I was a kid, and I think I had some of the action figures from that. Like cool. Sting in that?
Sting, yep.
Yeah, the one that his character.
He played the evil.
Yeah.
I get the family names mixed up. It's not the Atreides, I don't think. Is it the other one?
Yeah.
James has got a poll for us here. Chalice, the Icewind Chronicles is inspired by R.A. Salvatore. Cool.
Huh. Okay. All right. Icewind Dale. Yep.
Nice.
That band.
There we go. Thank you, chat.
Aaron, do you have more? Or are you?
I think I am out of stuff. I think I showed some of them kind of at the same time. You know, multiple Metallica ones. I will say though, is one last thing. We keep circling back to this stuff, but the war thing with Metallica, the war novels. Don't forget on this classic, the thing that should not be.
Yeah,
that's another Cthulhu or Stranger Eons, death may die reference. I knew there was a reason that I brought out Master of Puppets. I think that was what I was getting at. Other than that, I think I've shown everything that I have.
All right. Alan, you have more?
Yeah, a few.
Let us have it.
I'll stream through some stuff here kind of quick. One I don't own a copy of to show, but is worth mentioning. Law's Rocket on their Know Your Enemy album, their third album where they get a bit thrashier, did a song, The Most Dangerous Game, which is based on a short story from the 1920s, which, again, guy falls off a boat, swims to island, ends up being hunted by some mad Russian big game hunter. And so it's, the kind of, classic duel. It's a story that's been reinterpreted, 100 different times in books and movies and film. So I remember using that one as an example in 10th grade English class, literally breaking out the little J card to my Law's Rocket tape to the English teacher was quite impressed. She's like, that's kind of neat. Let's see, what else have we got? I've shown this album before. Tennessee thrash band called Intruder. And they have a song on here called Second Chance, which is actually inspired by a fantasy series called Riverworld. which I've never heard many references to. So I don't know much about it. It's not one I've ever tracked down to read. I believe it was originally written in the 1920s, and I'm trying to see if I had any notes about it. It's not one that comes up very much. Intruder. Yeah, I didn't find a whole lot about it. But it's based on like a series. Here we go. Yeah, by Philip Farmer. And apparently, again, it's another one of these where, humans are sort of, colonizing another world. So the idea of second chances, you're getting to start over, make up for all the ways we fucked up our first planet. But it also gets a little bit into ideas of, again, manipulation, control. What do you do with a society? How much freedom is too much freedom and whatnot? So kind of cool there. We've got going for power metal circles, the band Wuthering Heights. Excellent power metal band. One of the best from the early 2000s.
I've been meaning to check that out on your recommendation. I keep forgetting to do so.
It's really, really good stuff. And they obviously are taking their name from the Emily Bronte novel. And strangely enough, they're not the only one who's used Bronte as inspiration. Angra, on their first album, Angels Cry, has a song called Wuthering Heights, which is, kind of, telling a little bit of the story of Wuthering Heights, which, Bronte, I can probably pass on that in terms of reading material, but it has come up in power metal circles. A little different take. Somebody earlier in the chat mentioned Iron Maiden's Running Silent, Running Deep. Didn't talk about many of the sort of more political thriller type novels and stuff, but Testament did a song in that vein. The last track on this album, 7 Days in May, was originally a novel written in 1962. And it's one of these kind of political military thrillers where this guy very accidentally stumbles upon a plot by the military to attempt a coup of the United States government. And he literally has 7 days to sort of defuse the situation. But of course, he doesn't really know who he can trust or not. It was made into a movie in around, I think, 64. It's very much the kind of thing you'd associate with Tom Clancy in the modern era. I read the book back in college. There was a week I finished final exams really early, but couldn't move out for a couple of days. So I went to the library and pulled it off the shelf because I knew the Testament song. So heavy metal helps you read, kids. Oh, what else have we got here?
What was the Running Silent, Running Deep based off of?
I guess that one is a book as well. Was it Tom who mentioned that one earlier in the chat? I'm trying to remember. Folks have been mentioning a lot of good stuff.
That one did not pop into my head. I know there's a lot of them. There's like Brave New World and Red and the Black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Maidens goes on and on, but someone had mentioned Running Silent, Running Deep earlier, but not sure. Anyway, moving on, since I've got just a few more. Robert Louis Stevenson has not the first name you'd associate with heavy metal, but a couple of bands have done ones from him. Cloven Hoof is one of many, many bands who have done a Jekyll and Hyde song. So obviously one of the sort of famous, again, that Victorian era kind of horror, kind of mystery tale. Lots and lots of bands have done that. Cloven Hoof is just one I remembered off the top of my head, so I grabbed a Sultan's Ransom. Pretty cool post-New Wave of British heavy metal album. I'm sorry, what, Aaron?
I have the first one. I've never heard that album, Sultan's Ransom.
They changed styles as they went through the 80s a little bit more. They kind of, became a little bit more of a, power metal band in a good way. I like their albums. But let's see. Robert Louis Stevenson was also touched upon by Running Wild. Marty, I thought you might pull this one. They did Treasure Island as the big, 13-minute track or something that wraps up this album. How long is Treasure Island? Maybe it's not 13 minutes. 11 minutes. It was obviously the perfect song for Running Wild to do. They've taken a few stabs at those long form songs over the years, and some of them are good, some of them miss the mark. Treasure Island is just perfect. The song gets stuck in your head for days, and really, how could it not have worked for a band that's all about historical pirate stuff? Let's see, 2 more, and then we'll call it a day. One of those cult black metal albums that's been a fan favorite for years now, Caladan Brood.
Great. Yep.
A great band, great album. Real shame they haven't done anything else yet. But the whole album is based around the Books of Malazan, which I may be mispronouncing. This is not a series I know much about, but it's a long-running series that covers like tens of thousands of years of this, empire, literally watching, different civilizations rise, go to war, fall into decay, new generation comes along. It's one of these very much, kind of on the scale of Tolkien, just, huge, genealogies and lineages that you're supposed to follow down through time. Haven't read it. It's by someone named, I think is Eric Stevenson, or maybe it's Steven Erickson. That's Steve Erickson. There we go. Got it the second time. So yes, if anybody's looking for another one of these, just, massive, deep, detailed fantasy arcs to go through, the Books of Malazan will tie into your Caladan Brood album.
That Caladan Brood album, for those that aren't aware, it's the main guy in Visigoth's project.
Yep.
It's total summoning worship, and if you get the LP, it has 2 summoning covers on the LP as a bonus they sound exactly like the original. It's quite amazing how they completely nailed it. Anyway,
and they're from Utah, so
yep.
What a twist!
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it has been reissued too. I know for a while this was expensive and hard to find, but it's been reissued, so it's not so bad now.
Great album.
And last but certainly not least, the first Atlantean Codex album, The Golden Bough. This is a band
so fucking good.
Yes, I geek out about this band a lot, but The Golden Bough was one of these sort of social anthropology works written in the late 1800s or maybe very early. Yeah, Fraser wrote it in 1890. And it's this weird thesis where he sort of tried to relate all the traditions of mythology and the modern religions at that time and the concept of magic, and tried to make like a coherent sort of evolution out of all of it. That his idea was that early humans would have basically seen magic as a way to directly interact with nature, and that eventually evolved into the different mythic traditions where you would have things like a god figure that would be like an intermediary between humans and natural force. And that, of course, would eventually, evolve into modern religions, replacing, some of, the more, earlier concepts of, fertility deities. But his idea was that you could still find a lot of these elements down through all those things, that you could trace, certain rituals all the way back to these early things. The idea of the sacrifice of the king. It was something that you could, from Jesus, all the way back through, Greek, Romantic, and, early human civilizations, that there was always this idea that sometimes you have to be sacrificed for the good of your people, and fertility rites and things like that. A lot of Fraser's work was discredited relatively soon. In the decades after he published it, a lot of people found it very interesting, except for his colleagues in social anthropology, which found it to be kind of just a lot of sort of hearsay and speculation. That it didn't hold up to a real academic analysis very well. And even, I think Fraser was pretty upfront about that. He's like, yes, this is, just my idea. I'm kind of thinking it through. I don't think he ever tried to die on that hill or anything about the concepts in The Golden Bough. But it became one of those books. It was, very much targeted at sort of, the one percenters, the educated elites of the time. And it had a big impact on a lot of 20th century literature. Folks like C.S. Lewis, were very taken with the work, others as well. So a lot of elements of that main thesis worked their way into all these other, later works of fiction and stuff that were kind of taking concepts from The Golden Bough and still using them, even though the main idea of it was pretty much thrown out the window, a long time ago, and never got a real strong foot in the academic circles it was first published. That's probably a lot more than you wanted to know about the Golden Bough, but as Marty said, this is a dork fest tonight, and apparently I am king of the dorks this evening. So, I've got two very strong co-dorks helping me out, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, before we knock this on the head in the research for this, I stumbled across an example of metal musicians influencing literature.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to show that here if I can figure out how to do this again. Share screen. Share screen. Chrome tab. All right. This is a book series called Swords of Steel. This is version number 2, featuring stories by E.C. Hellwell, which is Mark Shelton from Manila Road, Byron Roberts from Balsagoth, Mike Scalzi from Sluffeg, and Howie Bentley, Cauldronborn, all metal musicians that wrote short stories in the fantasy realm and put into the Swords of Steel book series. There's also an number 1. I haven't read any of these. I just found out about it today. I thought I'd put it up on here. You can buy it for $43 if you want a paperback. Apparently, it's a very short run mass market paperback. It says mass market paperback, but it's still $43. But don't read this book unless you have nerves of steel. But it's very cool that these are obviously bands that are very influenced by literature, and they put their money where their mouth is. Oops, what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to get rid of this stop screen. There we go. So yeah. Oh, and there was also a comment here by Rick that might be jest, I don't know, but Alan, danger, screw it. It's about Tarzan, right?
It always comes back to danger with me and Rick.
It does.
We're 2 steps above look what the cat dragged in, but it's an important 2 steps. They're crucial.
Yes. But before we call it here, I just want to put a shout to those of you that may not have noticed. This week, we had a busy week here at Heavy Metallurgy. Not only was the album club, we covered this album here, which was Dold Vorde Ens Navens Morkere.
Really cool black metal album. If folks aren't familiar with it, go back and check that out.
Yep, check it out. Very cool. We have about an hour-long special on it on Wednesday, and then Tuesday, Ellen and I jumped on and did an album of the day series, which we might continue to onward with on Tuesdays if both of us have the time. We'll probably be back this Tuesday unless something cataclysmic happens, but definitely a couple things to check out this week if you missed them. We noticed lower counts on the views. Figured a lot of people read Maryland Death Fest, so probably not watching a whole lot of YouTube these days. But also, Aaron, thank you so much for bringing this topic to us. It was great. It turned out really, really well.
Oh, yeah, it was a great idea.
Great idea. And everybody, please go check out Kanawha Black. It's available through Byron Recordings and from the band directly. There's a link to Nechochwen's Bandcamp page in the description below. Anybody have any final comments?
Thanks for having me on and talk about this subject. I think it's pretty cool, and I learned a lot of stuff that I did not know, both about bands and about literature. And I was just thinking of albums I didn't even think of as your this one, for example. I'll give one last one that I just thought of. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this. Catacombs. Super heavy.
Funeral Doom.
In the depths of Relay, however you say it.
Yeah. I've heard that.
Lovecraft inspired stuff. So very heavy stuff on Morbid Records. I don't know. It's like, why didn't I think of that one earlier? So yeah, I'm thinking of how we get influenced by things, and as Marty showed, how you can influence other things with it. You can have literature that comes from inspiration in metal. I hadn't thought of it in the reverse way, but yeah, very cool topic. And thanks for feeding my brain with all this stuff. It's very cool to talk about it. And thank you all for who've listened to the record. We're proud of it, and we really appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Yes, don't forget to go back and check out Nechochwen's Kanawha Black. Really excellent album, very well crafted. It was worth the wait. If you're a fan of the band, you won't be disappointed. If you're not familiar with the band, go give it a listen. I think you'll like what you hear.
Yes, and one last thing to reiterate: this everybody's homework. If you have not heard "Traveler" by Lord Wirdslav Fegg, go listen to this. It's on Spotify. Yeah. It's so fucking good. This is a banger, perfect riff album. Get it, listen to it, enjoy it for sure.
And it does get overlooked in Sloth Fegg's catalog for some reason. And it was kind of hard to get back in the days. The only thing I can think of.
Well, this is a reissue. They just reissued it last year.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's not hard to track down now, but I know back in the day trying to find a copy of that particular one was a real pain. But yeah, it's for me, it's easily their best work. Yeah.
Well, that's it. We'll see you Tuesday, and Wednesday we're covering book. The Album Club is doing Milai Rage's "Kill to Survive." So if you have not boned up on your homework, everybody give that a spin.
Yep. Little obscure Massachusetts power thrash from the late 80s. So everybody should go check that one out.
So if you're looky-loo and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Click the bell and tell a friend about us. We'd like some more people hanging out here chatting with us on Fridays. But until next week, everybody have a good one. Aaron, thank you again. Alan, as always, you're the best, sir.
Thank you.
We will see you all soon.
Again, thanks a lot.